for those of us who have already read the novella many times or just once, you remember the big moments. Well, because they're very memorable. So when we're watching it on TV, it's not the big moments, but how they do the big moments. And that's a big thing. We've got a lot of emotion wrapped up in this. Some of us read this novel 20 years plus ago, and you don't have to have read it a long time ago to have that feeling of, I sure hope this is good. So when you do see it come out well, it's a mixture of great feelings, one of which is relief. Like, they got it right. Many of us love Dunk and Egg, long before the notion of a TV show. Even the first TV show was a thing. And we loved Baelor Breakspear back then, too. He's one of the characters that's central to the story for obvious reasons. We'd be pretty upset, or at least annoyed or something, if they got him wrong. And one of the joys of knowing what's coming as well is you get to vicariously live through your friends and family who haven't seen it. And that's been a lot of fun. We knew it would be, but it's gone farther than we thought. There's been more of it. The internet's exploded. If you had told me that Baelor Breakspear would be internet famous and getting memed all the time and be so popular, I mean, we knew he deserved it, but did millions and millions of other people? Well, they do now. It's really amazing to see this happen. He's pretty obscure when you get into it, I mean, not anymore. He's not obscure anymore, y'all. He was obscure. So, yeah, a few weeks ago he was obscure. Now he's a hero. Just like, kind of like how Duncan's going to be. So he's a real one. He's an exception to Raymond's rant, a person of incredible privilege and power who put himself at risk for principles. People loved the egg reveal, but they loved him before that. It didn't change necessarily how much you liked him. Maybe it made it more interesting. Maybe it changed a little bit, but it was a gradual thing. With Baelor, it was, whoa, holy crap, I like this guy. Maybe you liked how he carried himself, but this is such a change. It's a sudden flood of love for this character. The final line of the episode, and it became one of the highest rated TV episodes of any of the three shows. Oh, and of course, there were characters besides Baelor in this one, y'all. So we'll be discussing all that and more on this episode of History of Westeros podcast. Hello and welcome, everybody. We are back at our usual time to talk the episode, even though the episode itself came out a bit early, thanks to the superb owl. That's right. Dragons, hedge knights, and all in between bow to the superb owl. You can catch our review episodes at this time and our preview episodes on most Fridays. We didn't have one last Friday because of that schedule change, but we are back on this Friday at 5:30 Eastern to discuss what we expect in the Name of the Mother, which is the name of that one. This one, of course, is called Seven. And, of course, right after the preview episode, we'll be doing my game stream, continuing the adventures of Dunk and Egg in game format. Sean, well, I guess I was about to say we've got a fourth person with us, but your kitty has vanished since we started. So, how you doing, and what you got to drink there?
I'm doing well, and by the way, Toph is still just right next to me. She'll probably get on my lap again. I have sparkling ice, black cherry mixed with the Naked Green drink mixed with Magic Mind. Delicious as always.
It's like it's like Dunkin'. Yeah, you can real quick. It's like Dunk and Egg. Who knows what tomorrow will bring? Well, who knows what weird drink you'll make next? Yeah. Go ahead.
I just want to give a quick shout out. I ran into a listener in the wild, Harley. If you're out there listening,
nice.
Thanks for tuning in. I was in a Magic tournament and wearing my History of Westeros shirt, and she's like, "Oh, I like that shirt. That pot weight, that's me."
Whoa. Very
that's
cool,
fun, Sean.
Nice.
Yeah.
Speaking of shirts, I have the Knight of Seven Kingdoms shirt on here, which y'all can purchase through our threadless shop. The link is in the description. It's made up like a tour shirt. Ashea designed it, and it's got all the different stops for Dunk and Egg that we know of, which is plenty, and it looks great. Now, you can get it two-sided or one-sided. For viewing purposes, I have the one-sided version, but you can get a two-sided version as well.
Can I make another quick point?
You should.
Your intro about the idea that, kind of knowing it already, what's going to happen, but still exciting to see it, and the people who don't know. And it seems generally my finger on the pulse of the viewership is that people are surprised. Maybe some people had an idea that something was up with Egg, but weren't really. We're still, it's a shocking moment. I think that I knew when I read the book. I think I had been spoiled. I was so kind of immersed in the fandom that I knew. So it wasn't a total surprise to me. But still, that first time reading it, I did not pick up on all the clues along the way. Just like, oh, there's the reveal.
Yeah.
But having read it multiple times after the fact and watching the show, I think it's an example of a couple things. One, the rewatch value was really good for someone who didn't know, even for someone who did know, I guess. But because you see all the clues that were there along the way, it's just an indication of how well written it was. It's something that I love is when something is a reveal or a surprise happens, and when you look back on it, it's almost obvious. I think that's a sign of good writing, that they were able to give the clues but bury them in a way that you didn't key in on it, but it was clearly set up and not something they randomly decided on. Furthermore, it's a good example of something. If something's really great, it can't be quote unquote spoiled. You know what I mean? Like, even though we all know this, we're still excited to see it. Kind of like a great comedy. You can rewatch whatever, Ghostbusters or Super Troopers. Comedy largely depends on surprise, but even when you know the punchline, it's still funny to see it again, so I think it's a sign of it being truly well written and truly well portrayed in the show.
Well said, yeah, and I think even Baelor joining Dunk is also something you can see the clues for if you look ahead. It's like, well, he's this chivalrous guy, this short one man, like, and you're right, but you don't see it coming, and afterwards you're like, yeah, that makes so much sense. So you're right, that's good writing.
He wasn't on the dais either, when Dunk's appealing to the crowd. Where is he?
It's like, right. Yeah, things like that. So we've got a lot to talk about. Me and Ashea, that is, appeared on X-Ray Vision podcast. That's Jason Concepcion and his partner Rosie, their show. And they discuss a lot of pop culture and fandom things. And we love talking Game of Thrones with them. It's exciting to talk Hedge Knight and Night of the Seven Kings with them. So check that episode out.
That was full spoilers, and a lot of it focused on the prophecy that Dunk and Egg were told, but we hit on other topics as well.
And we would love to hear you all's takes or stories, your anecdotes from how your family reacted to Egg, to Baelor, and, well, next week as well. How that's going to go, we'll be curious for that as well. More of a how sad were they kind of way. But let's get to all that in due time here. Go ahead.
Sorry, I do want to interject a couple quick things. One, we did decide a couple episodes ago that our audience was pretty much everyone who read the book. So we do spoil things. I do feel like we should give that heads up.
Oh, yeah, we did. We said that. That's the first thing I said.
Okay, sorry, I missed it. And also, I wanted to say just one, I don't want to get into the whole thing, but I did realize something, and it occurred to me. I was talking about it last week. Everyone rejoicing at Egg's death. Whenever a king dies, there's a new king. And you rejoice, long live the king. I think that's the answer. The Egg isn't going to take it that way. I still like the idea that it'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy type thing, but I think that's the explanation for why all rejoice in his death.
I think that sounds like a lot of cope for the fact that Egg is going to be a lot darker in his adulthood. But
I won't deny that's a possibility also, yeah.
Let's have our poll. Would King Daeron, had he been there, allowed Prince Baelor to participate in the Trial of Seven? There's no right or wrong answer here, of course. We don't know. So I'm just curious what the consensus is here. You can vote yes or no, and we'll take a look at the end of the episode. So the episode's called Seven. It's pretty straightforward in a lot of ways what that means. It certainly has a lot to do with achieving that number on both sides. They both have to actually get to 7, plus the concept of it is introduced, and we learn a little bit about its history, that it came from the Andals. It's a religious ceremony. It's kind of funny that it's a Valyrian descended person who's invoking an ancient Andal ritual against someone who is actually living up to Andal values. That's Aryan for you. So let's talk about our favorite performances. Sean, we'll start with you, and then we'll also do our favorite scenes or moments after that. So Sean, go ahead.
I think if I'm pressed, I want to pick Egg. I think that his sadness and his, I don't know what word to use, recoiling at Dunk's frustration was really well done. You really felt for him, and it's kind of connected to my favorite scene too, so I won't go on too much about it, but I will talk a little more about my favorite scene. But also want to say that Stefan did a good job too. Like, even though he's kind of like you're frustrated and angry with him, but he's got to do a good job to evoke that frustration in you. I think he gets a little credit, as small as his little part was,
I agree. I thought Stefan was quite good. You're right. He just kind of like, I totally agree. Ashea, what about you?
I will say, I knew what would happen with Stefan, and I still kind of like a streak in me wanted to believe him. So I do think he did a great job. My favorite performance has just got to be Dunk. This was, I think, Peter Claffey's best acting yet. You saw him in his rage and his sadness, and you see him, gaining confidence and able to make like a grand speech, at the end. I think Peter Claffey did a great job, and I'm going to give it to him.
Unsurprisingly, I picked Baelor. I guess this is the second time I've picked Baelor, so good job, Baelor. Yeah, obviously, I think what I said about him in the intro suffices to explain what I like so much. But yeah, I think the portrayal has been brilliant. They've nailed the difficulty and the conflict within the character, and people care about him so much. That right there says it all. People really care about this character, and well, let's go on. Favorite scene or moment, Sean? Which was yours?
Real quick, I'm going to follow up with your comment about Baelor. One thing I don't think the show is doing as well as the book, and maybe it's just my reading and my time to sit in it, but I feel like it was a bigger moment. The idea that Baelor is such a great champion isn't quite brought out. Like his prowess as a warrior isn't quite as focused on in the show, I think. And when he joins the list, it's a particular coup because he's probably better than all of them. You know what I mean? Like it's a big get for him to suddenly be on Dunk's side. But we'll probably talk more about that later. My favorite scene was just the very opening scene. The whole opening scene I thought was great. Like I said, I loved Egg's performance there. But specifically, just that very opening moment of Dunk just sitting there alone. I like pensive moments like this where we are both given a chance to consider what the character is thinking and going through, and maybe how we would feel, what we would do if we were in that moment. I like pensive, somber moments like this. It gives you a chance to sit and consider with it. Also, I want to point out, I thought it was super interesting. The opening shot, it looked kind of like the sky. It kind of looked like the sky and stars.
More than kind of, Sean.
I don't think that's a coincidence,
yeah,
right?
No.
I think it was well designed. Yeah.
No, I mean, I just want to tell you, like, that they definitely shot the stars and then merged it with the wood, in my opinion,
okay, yeah.
like to do that, I think. And it was very deliberate because Dunk has spent most of his nights outside under the stars. When he looks up at a wooden ceiling, when he looks up at the ceiling, like it's kind of like when you've looked at something a lot, you're going to see that pattern in it. And so I think that was that, and I think it was very beautiful, and why it's my favorite scene as well.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. And it's kind of like to add into what you're saying, Shay, and combined with what I was saying, is it gives you a chance to think about what Dunk's thinking about. You feel a little more in his shoes. Like, is he still sort of free, even though he's in prison, because he has his honor and his integrity and he knows he was right? Or is it extra sad and ironic that he's in prison, even though he should be free because he has his honor and integrity and did what was right? And I don't know. I loved it. I thought it was really great.
So, Shay, you said you really loved that scene too. So did I. But did you have maybe other things to say about that one, or perhaps a second favorite?
Yeah, I do. Yes, this was my favorite shot in an episode with beautiful shots. It was my favorite, was just that opening sequence. But I also liked the acting on display from Dunk and Egg together, the tears in Egg's eyes, the rage in Dunk's, the way he maybe, it still softens a little bit in that already. The dialogue, etc. I loved all of that. And the other favorite sequence I had, favorite scene, was Raymond's knighting. I liked a few things about it. I liked the implications from it. I liked the editing in it and the film work and the way that it transitioned to this very cinematic and dreamy sequence, when Lionel is actually knighting Raymond here. It's just stunning and kind of a little more slow-mo. And then it's quickly interspersed with the amazing shot of Dunk on his knees as if he were going to be knighted. But he is, of course, in his clothing now, which gives it this surreal quality so that you know that it's not actually a true flashback, right? And then you see one of the best faces ever, which is Arlen's,
He's like, I can't help you here, kid. I never did anything like this.
Yeah, exactly. He's just shrugging as if I got nothing for you, man. And this happens perfectly timed, kind of as Dunk is out of earshot of the rest of the dubbing of the vows, and so I thought that was well placed as well. I don't know, I thought it was really brilliant. We'll talk about it more, but comedic, moving, really made people think a lot and stirred up a lot of debate.
I know we want to move on, but I got to say I'm with you, Shaya. This is a great example of how editing can be such a great tool in storytelling. It's so underestimated, but someone had to decide to intersperse this and the timing of it and how the music went. It was just outstanding filmmaking. And my favorite part was the look of loving acceptance that Arlen had as he was just about to knight Dunk in this flashback of when that happened.
Yeah, I loved that knighting with Raymond scene. Just the fact that they had this character that was just irreverent about everything, that took something seriously, really gave it extra gravitas. So
that's a great point, though, Aziz, about Lionel. That he really did take it seriously.
It's the first thing he took seriously the entire show.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
I mean, even talking about fighting the Kingsguard, he wasn't. He was like, dirty up their white dresses or whatever. Yeah, this is the only thing he was serious about. I love that. It was really cool. So it gave it a little extra push there. So of course I'm picking the end scene with Baelor. Not surprising given what else I've said. I thought that was really well done. Mostly what I liked about it wasn't just the framing, the way they set it up, which was all very good. Dunk's desperation. They didn't try to overdo his entrance as if it was staged, because it wasn't. It's not supposed to be like he's waiting for his moment. No, it's like he already knew Dunk was short a guy and he's getting ready. Meanwhile, more drama plays out with who's on whose side and all that, unbeknownst to him. And so when he comes in, it's just focused on him and his expression, and his expression is really perfect. In the book, Shay and I were talking about this last night, he's described as having a sad smile. I'm not so sure that's a sad smile. To me, this is a little more guilty, which I think is perfect. He's like, I got to be here. I got to do this. It's my, this is the kind of realm I can't have a realm where his behavior is unpunished and the guy who did the right thing is punished. I can't have that. But also I got to fight against my family.
I think he looks resigned. It's kind of like,
that's a good point. Yeah.
Like he's done what he knows he has to do, but he still knows there's a drawback to it. It's kind of like, do you want to lose $100 or $1,000? Like, oh, well, I guess I'll lose 100. It's hard to be happy about that, but it is the right decision,
Yeah, I would say resigned. That's why when Dunk looks at it and says almost sadly, he might not be attributing it to the right emotion that he's seeing, but I think you could see almost sadly as being resigned as well. Sure,
yeah. I think we're pretty close on that for sure. And Sean, based on something you just said, I have a thing in the document that I'll move up here. We can talk about it now. This is a great example of, like what you said about the editing, is a perfect example of how I think the showrunners, like, quote unquote, should approach things. The visual medium is so different than the book. You have so much else to work with, like that. Like flashbacks, like great acting, like just any kind of visuals, like emotion that's harder to portray on the page, or great scenes like this. There's certain things that are different. There's just certain things you can't do. Music, one of the best examples there is, right? So working within that, that's a lot. You've got a lot to work with in terms of that. So why change the story? Keep the story as is. You got so much else you can mess with, and those are the things we're liking the most. I think they're capturing the great parts of the story because they're leaving it intact and making it something that we haven't seen, even though we have seen it. So let's talk about that first scene, apology and forgiveness. We'll kind of work our way chronologically through the scenes here today because it just works pretty well that way. It flows nicely, and we can do it that way. So it looks like we talked about the stars into the jail cell thing, the no open sky, and how that's kind of refers to the earlier theme of sleeping without a pavilion and getting the good luck. Well, he's not getting good luck yet inside here, but things turn. the medium is really nice here, and we get reminded of, even in Dunk in his worst moment here, he's still like nice to the rat, you know, like he's just like petting the rat, and that's just how he's nice to the horses.
Rage.
Nice. And when they come in, again, they just do it like the book says. The quote is, he sat by the tray, pulled apart the bread with his hands, and stuffed some into his mouth. He was shoving it into his mouth in the show. It was exactly what they did. And y'all mentioned it in the beginning here. Dexter's acting here was fantastic. This is a mode, an emotion we haven't seen him in yet. It's another piece of his range that we're exposed to, and it's like, well, this kid just keeps nailing it. One thing they took out, which is a little interesting, is they took out the origin of Egg's name from the scene, which is a thing that happens in the book version, which means they took out the mention of Aemon. So, which you'd think they kind of want to do that. You know, you'd want to make that connective tissue, but maybe they're holding back on that for a surprise for some people, because it is going to be a surprise for a lot of people. That's something that most people still don't know, other than people who've read it. Like, so everybody here knows that, obviously, but a lot of y'all's families don't know that. So one thing I love too here about the scene is that Dunk, despite what trouble he's in, despite who Egg actually is, he is not cowed by Egg's rank. He's not intimidated by the fact that Egg is a prince. He's still just focused on the right and wrong of it and his virtues and values, which is just, that's Dunk. It's great. And Egg is right there with him. He can't help it. He's like, yeah, pretty much every excuse Egg gives, Dunk has an answer for. And then, as usual, Dunk backs down after expressing his anger. He's like, let's make it a teaching moment. You know, but even that's different here, though, right, y'all? Because he's no longer teaching what he thinks is an orphan boy. Now he's teaching a royal. But this royal does need parenting.
I did think that was a neat moment when Egg said he didn't think he was doing anything wrong. And Dunk's like, you did, that's why you lied. But it's interesting to think about the idea of doing. There's a difference between what's morally wrong and what's socially or legally wrong. Does that make sense? Like what Dunk did was just something that might get him in trouble because the rules of his family or royalty or whatever. But it wasn't actually wrong. I don't think it wasn't immoral. He didn't deny anyone or he didn't steal anything or hurt anybody other than, with a bunch of other factors included, Dunk's ego or something, but
he knew he was doing something that,
was inappropriate. He knew he was doing something inappropriate, but not immorally wrong. Dunk knew he was doing something wrong when he punched the prince, right? I don't know.
It's the same as Dunk knows he's doing something wrong by lying that he's a knight. And that's the comparison that I see here.
What? He's what?
Yeah, you said, I got you. You said, yeah.
I got it. This is that scene in the book where he thinks about that. He starts thinking about, wanting about the same concept about how he would lie about something. He's not specific, but it's similar here. Now, he's a little angrier here than he is in the book, but it ends up in the same place. He's also a little angrier with Daron later, but it ends up in the same place too. Let's have the book quote, because it's a little different, but it gets to the same point, and I think it's nice.
He knew what it was like to want something so badly that you would tell a monstrous lie just to get near it.
I thought you were like me,
he said.
Might be you are, only not the way I thought.
We're both from King's Landing still, the boy said hopefully. Dunk had to laugh.
Yeah, you from the top of Aegon's Hill and me from the bottom.
That's not so far, sir.
So it's a little more lighthearted in the book, and, whatever, that's fine. I think this gives it a little more tension. That's just a choice they made, and I have no problem with that. In both cases, the scene ends when he finds out Baelor's waiting for him. He's like, oh, you've got a prince waiting, mommy. I'm not, okay, we're going now. So any other thoughts on that, or we can go ahead and talk about the scene with Baelor?
I guess I'll have one quick thought to segue into Baelor. Is I did think it was interesting that Dunk was a little bit more frustrated, indignant, maybe with Egg, and that continues into Baelor too. I'll talk about it a little bit more there, but I think it's interesting variation from the book.
Right on. So yeah,
I like Egg's little fit.
Oh yeah,
with his sash. I don't know. I just like his formal fit.
Pretty similar to the book description of what he's wearing, minus like it has a big Targaryen sigil on it. It's the only notable difference there. In the book, it does, because it doesn't here. So Dunk speaks to Baelor, and Egg is there for the first part of the scene. Also, like the book, interesting note that Ashea caught there. The book he's reading, we figured he was reading books about laws and stuff. He is specifically reading about Maegor's Trial of Seven, which was the last one, and that included a Sir Daemon Morgan, and there was also some other mentions of people standing in as champions for other types of trials by combat. Not necessarily Trials of Seven, but just other examples that are in there.
Yeah, he specifically reads about how Sir Giles Morgan stands on behalf of a very young King Jaehaerys versus
Sir Harold Langward?
Yeah, Sir Harold Langward, who was a Kingsguard member. I was trying to think of a word. A disgraced Kingsguard member.
Maegor's Kingsguard,
Yeah. So he stands on behalf of his king. Jaehaerys wants to do it, but they instead say the Kingsguard can fight on behalf of the crown. And then another example involving King Jaehaerys, which is Sir Braxton Beesbury, who, does dishonor to Jaehaerys' daughter, Sarah, so to speak. And King Jaehaerys does, in fact, fight him. He's in his 40s by this time, and he does fight him.
The Beesburies have really had a sweet role a number of times.
Ooh, there's some buzz about them for sure. So the dialogue is pretty similar here as well. Dunk defends Egg immediately. There's the slightly cutting remark, "Don't spill it on him." That's in the book as well, and that brings up our awareness that's we get in the book is through Dunk's thoughts, but here he's already defending Egg. He knows that Baelor's probably going to be tough on him, and Dunk's like, yeah, he's a good boy, et cetera, et cetera. The same line about you don't have to intend harm to cause it, which we were discussing earlier. That's true. Baelor points that out. He also but Egg points out something interesting that Baelor doesn't really respond to, and it's a good point. He couldn't have reached the castle in time. If to do the proper thing would have meant leaving Tanzel with all her fingers broken. It means stopping him later when the damage is already done, right? And there's no way to undo that damage. So he focuses instead on Egg pointing out how much he doesn't like his brother Aerion, and Baelor pivots to that. He says, the Septons say we must love our brothers. So he kind of dodges that, and that's a underlying theme of this scene. Undercurrent is that Baelor is sort of quietly dodging a few things, but Dunk pushes him to be what he really is. Baelor's like, yeah, I'm the son of a prince, or I'm the son of a king. I'm a man who has been around. I've had to compromise. I'm a hand of the king. I have to deal with these noble lords, powerful people. Compromise is so much part of his life. So that's how he's approaching this in the first place. It's like, well, there should have been some compromise here. No strictness. But Dunk is like, no. We took the same oath. And Baelor just can't argue against that. He's like, damn, Dunk is right. So all these things he's trying not to talk about, Dunk just keeps pushing him on pushes the buttons just right. And Baelor he's moved, just like so many other people are moved by Dunk's sincerity. But in this case, it's so much more important that it happened because so much more is at stake. It's not just, somebody speaking nicer to you because they realize you're not trying to, rip them off like Steely Pate or something like that. This is another level.
So a couple things. One, Baelor was sort of dodging the Aerion issue too when he was like, the Septons say we're supposed to love our brothers. Like, the between the lines here is like, even though he doesn't deserve it,
Isn't there a butt in there somewhere? Come on.
Yeah, it's also a neat thought that I had that Baelor probably hasn't had that much interaction with Egg. He's a little frustrated with Egg and says, "Don't spill the drink." Probably every time Egg comes onto Baelor's radar, it's some kind of trouble. Does that make sense? Like, Baelor doesn't necessarily really know Egg or that he's a good or a smart kid or whatever. He just knows that him and Aerion got in another fight. What's this about the cat? I could just see Baelor when he's worried about taxes and organizing events and meetings with nobles, and all of a sudden he's got to deal with Egg again. Oh, what is it with this little kid? I can see him, and here once again, this little kid causing trouble. I could see on some level Baelor being frustrated with him. All the more important for Dunk to stick up, I guess. I will say though here a big difference in this scene from the books that I don't know, I can't decide what I think about it, is that Dunk is a little bit more indignant and I don't know what to say, aggressive lawyerly versus Baelor here. That in the books, his thoughts were a little bit more. It was more like he's a simple guy just trying to do the right thing. Whereas here it's and that's kind of like his demeanor and his thought and his attitude and everything. Like, oh, I thought I was just protecting a weak person. But here it's more like he's making his case against Baelor. Like, we took the same oath. He's like arguing with logic, not baffled that he's in trouble. Does that make sense? And here he's baffled that he's in trouble and trying to prove why he shouldn't be. In a book, he's like, oh, well, I guess I messed up. He's a little bit more resigned to his fate. You know?
That's true. He is more. Yeah, I agree with that. He is more resigned to his fate. He doesn't quite push as much or as aggressively.
I would say I think Baelor is probably on edge when it comes to Egg a little bit. He knows how Arian has turned out. He knows that Daron is kind of a drunkard and a mess, right? There's not a good standard for these sons, of Maekar. So I would say he's more like pushing back against like a violent tendency in a little boy and saying like, no, you can't want that. You can't want that. And he is making a religious argument for it, but I think he's kind of testing him a little bit to see like, is he full of poison and hatred in his heart, or you know what I mean? So I think the jury's out for him.
Now, Baelor is no Jaime Lannister, but there is a similarity here in how he responded to Brienne versus how Baelor responds to Dunk. It's very similar in that they are amazed and charmed by the sincerity of this person and how you're actually really serious about this, aren't you? Like, they repeatedly tested and repeatedly they're like, no, this person really is living up to true knight vows. The oath they take really seriously. It's such a rare thing. You don't expect it. Just like how Dunk was going around, people put up their guard against him. They expect him to try to pull something or that he's got an agenda, and then they realize he doesn't. They're like, wow, this guy's actually sincere. What a rare thing. And Baelor has been trying to help Dunk all along for that. He's been trying to guide him and do what he can, but he feels constrained. Like I said, he's compromised. He's compromising. In fact, that's a good way to put it. He has been compromised by his position, and the fact that he has to deal with so many people of power has caused him to compromise so often that he maybe lost sight of what Dunk says. The oath is the oath. You can't get around that. And if Baelor wants to set an example, which he does, that's the kind of man he is. If he's not going to take that vow seriously, then no one will, right? Like, if supposedly the greatest knight in the realm doesn't stand up for this, then no one will. In fact, they'll do what happened is they'll laugh at the very idea.
Yeah, Baelor is really hemming and hawing here because he's thinking about the implications of how this might go, right? His brother's going to be mad at him. The royal family will have a mar against him. Arian might have to face some penalty, or the crowd that got mad when he killed the horse is going to be even more. He's thinking about how all these things will go and play out, and the trouble and stress and reputation and da-da-da-da-da. And Dunk is like, none of that matters. You just got to follow your oath. You know what I mean? Like, Baelor through his whole life has made, like you said, all these compromises, thinking about how to keep the peace, how to stop rebellion, how to collect the taxes, how to keep the family looking good. And Dunk is reminding him, like, those are all compromises to your oath, your honor, your integrity. Like, what does all that matter if you get there through deceit and dishonor and violence and lies and all this other stuff? Like, at this point, you got to stop cowering to Arian. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you can't let him be such a bad person and also be a knight, because what does that do to all the other knights, you know?
Arian before was able to get away with it because it was quiet. It was under wraps. People knew he had this reputation. But the other thing that's really big about all this is that Baelor realizes this is a big deal. People are going to hear about this. Whatever happens, it's going to be widespread. People are going to talk about it. That's what Stefan's point is. He's like, oh, well, it won't be hard to find more people to join. They want to be part of this glorious event that's so rare. So that means it will be remembered no matter what happens. And that's part of why Baelor realizes he has to do something. He has to step up because this is a memorable thing.
That's the only reason we're still talking about Giles Morgan or Damon Morgan or Braxton Beesbury. They were in these big famous trials, right? And so, yeah, Stefan wants to be in that history book that Baelor was reading.
Yep. 3 Targaryens, 3 Kingsguard, and Apple.
And I still think Baylor at this point is trying to get Aerion to back down. He's telling Dunk, look, challenge your trial by combat. You know, he might be scared of you. He might be scared of getting beat up by you or even being embarrassed by you. Like, Baylor's hoping that this is the out. The Aerion will just back down, which wouldn't have been that hard for Aerion to do, honestly. No one probably would have remembered this if he just backed down, right? They would have remembered it as much as he killed the horse. It would have been like this black mark on the Targaryen family that the next time there's any drama, it gets overshadowed. That's what Baylor's hoping for. He's still
a quiet result.
He doesn't think that I don't know if he's thought out far enough about the idea of Aerion will want the trial by 7. Dunk won't be able to get 7 to fight for him. I'll have to fight for it. I don't know if Baylor's played all that out in his mind yet. I think he is hoping at least that it just doesn't get to any of that.
I think he is aware of the possibility because he's looking at the book about Trials of 7 before the issue is even raised. But I think you're right. It's a really important point that you're right that he's hoping Aerion will back down. He knows Aerion. He knows Arion's kind of a coward. Not a complete coward, but kind of a coward, which is why he's, like you said, it's a calculated risk that he might just end it. He might, okay, I'm not fighting this guy. But he's like, hopefully Aerion hasn't heard of Trials by 7, because then he might do that, which is exactly what happened.
Can I say, it's interesting to think about who Aerion might have idolized or looked up to in the Targaryen history. Maegor, perhaps. And who was part of a trial of 7? Maegor, right? So
what does he name his son?
Yeah,
Maegor.
Yeah, exactly. So it just, of course, Aerion knows this particular piece of history. In fact, he knows all about Maegor.
He's a Maegor stan. Yeah,
he is. I think so. It's really tight.
That would further explain why Maekar was like, what is this? What are you talking about? That he wasn't as aware.
Not a Maegor stan. Yeah. Why would you be unless you're someone like Aerion? Yeah. Unless you're just like all about all the history, in which case he's part of that. But Maekar's not that either.
Maekar doesn't seem to be that. Right?
No, he's not. So let's talk about ideals here a little bit. This is a kind of interesting the way this all plays out culturally, looking back really far into history. I touched on this in the intro. So referring to ideals, not combat traits or anything like that. Long ago, the Andal's migration began in a large part because of Valyrian expansion. And a lot of Andal ideals are in direct opposition of Valyrian ideals, which is almost certainly why they developed that way, because this was their big, great enemy. Oh, you're going to enslave the weak? Well, chivalry says protect the weak. It's pretty much the exact opposite. You guys are all about incest. Well, then no incest. That's a pretty straightforward opposite. Yeah, so a lot of that stuff, and it is playing out again, but it's the Valyrian guy who is using the Andal cultural tenet here as a weapon. He, like we said, he was maybe trying to get him to back down, but Aerion knew to pivot to the 7, and Dunk is like, what's that? And in the novel, just like in the show, it says Baylor seemed troubled. And it's like, yep, your gambit failed. I don't know what other play he had, but he's like, this is not going to just get swept under the rug. A trial by 7. He's immediately in that moment knows either Dunk's going to not have 7, and that's the result I really don't want, or it's going to be this huge event that I really don't want. Like, everyone's going to know about it, and everyone's going to know why it's happening.
There is another possibility that Dunk just runs away. And Baylor may not... Baylor's doesn't... He's got a little snippet of what Dunk's like, so he might not think that's likely, but it's got to at least be a possibility. Raymond recommends it. Doesn't seem like Dunk ever quite considers it, but in the book he does think to himself a couple times, if I wasn't thick as a castle wall, I would just be out of here. That is like it crosses his mind at least.
That's a great point, Sean, because he doesn't he just lets him go. He's like, go get your champions. He's like, there's no like guards or there's no security on that at all. That's a great point.
Yeah, I think Baylor has the measure of a man, and I think he can tell that he is honorable, and I think Dunk, as much as he says he would do it if he wasn't thick, Dunk specifically is thick. He is tall, right? Like, he is a big guy, and I think it would be harder for him to evade capture. I think
he's very recognizable.
He's very recognizable. An average man, a Raymond, could probably get away with it. They would lose their honor, and they would have to restart their life, but it would be possible. It would be possible. I don't think it was really possible for Dunk, and I think Dunk probably had some internal inkling that he couldn't get away with it, and he knew he couldn't live with himself, more importantly.
Now, a little more on this cultural background stuff. Even the concept of a trial by combat is something that would develop in the Andal cultural sphere that would never develop in the Valyrians. What do you imagine? They're like, yeah, trial by combat against one of the Dragon Lords. Yeah, no, they're not going to let you do that. Of course not.
They might let you do it, but they're going to use the dragon.
Yeah, or they might like only between Dragon Lords, like only if you're a high rank like them. It won't be to like regular, just because you're a knight. Like knight is pretty low rank for this rite, because there's thousands of knights, right? In Valyria, there wouldn't be that equivalent. So also, Valyria's approach to religion is interesting here to consider. They allowed, like a lot of empires in the real world, allow pretty much every religion as long as it's not, causing a disturbance in the peace or causing aggression or undermining the rule of the ruling party or the ruling families, what have you. So, and that, interestingly, keeps any one religion from getting too powerful, because it's like, well, there's like 100 of them. It doesn't seem like the idea that one religion is right is a lot harder to get into when there's like 80 more of them in your city. But when there's like one that just has some variations on it, you're like, well, that's the one. So it's very different. And this is an example of that. Like Andal religion is the one religion here. They don't have a variety. So there's the Targaryens, as the ruling family, are going to make use of that in ways that increases their power because they're stuck with it. They're like, well, we've adopted Andal values. We got to do this. Let's talk about Maekar briefly, too. He is interesting in this scene. It's a little bit different than the book. He's a little more angry, a little less stern. Ultimately not super different, but there's a few different things in the scene too that he has to react to, like the whole walnut thing. Maekar, like, he first sees him doing the walnuts and he's like, he's mad, but he doesn't say anything. It's like a kind of a pick your battles kind of thing. It's like, this, if I'm policing Arryn all the time, that's what I would be policing Arryn all the time. Some things he's going to get away with just because there's so much, Yeah,
look at this face right there. Yeah. He is so just done with his son right here. It's so good.
It's distracting and disrespectful to this proceeding for Arryn to be cracking those walnuts, but for Maekar to crack down on Arryn, it's also distracting and maybe not disrespectful. He just doesn't want to give him the credit. He doesn't want to encourage him. He doesn't want to further distract things. You said it perfectly. He's got to choose his battles.
Can I note here the great framing here of Arryn smacking his dagger or whatever down on the nut, and it's like right through Dunk's head. The way they framed that, I thought it was very striking, and then it goes away from that. But I also wanted to say, I just lost my train of thought. What about Maekar?
Well, you'll probably get it back. In the meantime, this is a fun thing to consider.
I know. It was about Arryn.
Oh, yeah.
He says that Dunk loosened his tooth. Do you think he really loosened his tooth if he's eating nuts? Okay, I'm just saying he's a liar. He's a liar.
So, speaking of pick your battles, that's the perfect phrase, because Maekar's like, I'm not going to get him on this. And then when Arryn announces trial by 7 and Maekar has that explained to him, it dawns on him. He's like, this kid just pulled me into his fight. He knows he has to fight for his son. Like, it's his honor. This is the kind of man Maekar is. He can't make another choice. He has to stand up for his son. Like, it's their appearance. This is, Targaryen marketing. He has to stand up for his son. He can't not do that. And he's like, that's when he does get mad. He's like, you idiot. He pulls him out of there and he's like, this isn't honor. This is nonsense. He understands. He knows who his son is. He's like, I've had enough of this.
I liked, even as they exit the room, he's pushing Arryn out of the room there. He's so frustrated.
And if he knew what the final result would be, like what this is actually going to cause, the worst example of chivalry, because of his pettiness, ends up the realm loses. The best example of chivalry. His brother's going to die because of this so-called nonsense. Right? Damn it.
Can I ask a question here? What is the birth order? Maekar's oldest son is Darren, right?
Yeah, yep.
And then Arryn is next.
Yeah.
Yes, and then Aemon, and then Egg. Then sisters, but in terms of the boys.
Right.
Daella, then Egg, and then Rhae is last.
But for this context here, in this moment, Maekar is even like, he asks him like, "Are you scared to just fight him on your own?" And Arian says, "Oh no, it's Daron too. His honor was also slighted. He's got to be part of this." So it's not just that Maekar is getting drawn into it. Daron's getting drawn into it, which probably makes Maekar extra mad because he knows Daron isn't going to want to do this, isn't qualified for this. All that is all interesting, but I started to wonder, how conniving is Arian?
Extremely.
He does seem to be smart, right? He's not
dumb.
Through.
Yeah.
And we did point out maybe he has a streak of cowardice, but he's not just a coward. It's not like black and white, coward or not coward, right? There's areas in between. And he might not be purely brave, but my point is that
he ends up in a sellsword company, for example.
He was going to Humphrey, right? When he stabbed that horse, he's thought out this trial of 7 thing. Is he angling to get Daron killed?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. He wants Daron killed. I think he's happy to have it's the same as House Frey in Game of Thrones, right? Any person that is out of your way in the line of succession is a net positive for you. So I think he is that far thinking. I think he is thinking that he wants to clear the way. It's a long shot, but I do think he thinks it's possible that he could become king.
100%. He framed it. The minute Dunk said trial by combat, there wasn't a pause. There wasn't. He's like, nope, trial by 7. Like, he's like, I refuse. He's like, you can't refuse. It's like, yes, I can. Trial by 7. He was totally prepared. He didn't have a book. He didn't refer. He was very prepared for that moment. I agree, Shay, and I agree that he thought through the consequences of it, the long-term consequences of it. Yeah, Maker's like, this is nonsense because he knows his own son. Like you said, Sean, he's like, why would you want to bring him into this if your goal is to win? Why would you want your incompetent brother?
I mean, Arian sees. He knows Maekar and Daron will be in this fight. He could lose Maekar and Daron, and then he's the head of his part of the family, right? Great for him. He doesn't necessarily know that Baelor will join. I think he was surprised. I don't think
that was a surprise,
planned for that.
Yeah.
But I think he sees Baelor join, and that he probably is more happy about that than worried. Yeah. I think he thinks this is a great opportunity for me. Right?
It could be, yeah, absolutely. Because you're right. There's a long time. There's a long time between now and him being older, and a lot can happen. People can die. That's what happens. The Great Spring Sickness happens, and Maekar does end up king. So had Arian got really close to the throne.
And I think Arian has fantasized about Valar specifically dying many times, right? I think he is really his competition. The crown princes, like the what he could have been.
The only other one of them was really a warrior.
Yeah, exactly. So I think he sees him as his competition, his main competition. And so he would like to knock Valar out as well if he had been in that trial.
And taking it a step further, we have to ask ourselves, at what point was this thing with Stefan set up? Was Stefan already going to Arian, or had he already talked to Arian before this next scene, which is Sir Stefan the Betrayer? Let's move on to that and discuss that possibility. One last thing. In the book, Daron is in this scene. But they wanted to kind of hold his reveal off a little longer to make it more about him, because in that scene he says like one line. So they wanted to let's hold off and bring him in later, and then he can have a lot of lines, and rather than just be like, wait, that's the guy sitting there. Yeah, it would have been a little distracting. I agree with that adaptation choice. Let's talk about Stefan. Go for it.
Can I help with a segue to Stefan by pointing out another pick I wanted to make for my favorite scene was the segues in general. I thought they did such an awesome job. The show in general is doing it, but particularly it stood out to me the moment when he's leaving. Like he walks from the meeting, that council meeting or whatever, to outside the castle gates, and it's raining, to his camp and it's raining. They did these quick cuts that what would have been an hour or more, they showed us in 3 seconds. And I think they do a lot of that through the course of the show. Really good, clever shifts from one scene to the next.
So the scene begins with Dunk leaving and encountering Raymond near his horses, which is also pretty similar to how it goes in the book. The "Are you hungry?" question is repeated from earlier. This time he doesn't say always. He says not really, because his stomach is churning. He's worried about what's going to happen. He's anxious.
I love that moment. Not always. Sometimes you're in emotional distress, and despite, your size and the fact that he should be hungry right then, he is not.
That was some hearty bread in the prison cell.
So yeah, when did Stefan betray Dunk? Was it
Can I also
before?
say-
Oh yeah, go for it.
Do they hug in the book? Do they mention that they hug each
I don't
other?
think so.
I liked that moment.
Yeah, I
I
like that
liked
too,
that
yeah.
they just like that they embraced. I
Yeah.
thought it was sweet.
Yeah, it
and
was.
Raymond's a real one for that.
So it may have come before even joining. He may have already been thinking about it, but it may have come after, which is somewhat implied in the book that he gets Dunk's trust and then goes to Arya and says, "Hey, I've got Dunk's trust. I can totally screw him over here."
I would say I guess it would be that.
Yeah.
Still,
Yeah.
I get that. Yeah,
Because
it could
Arya
have
would
been the
know
opposite,
that
but yeah.
Fossaway's with him.
Yeah, exactly. I think better for Stefan to go with like, "Hey, I have done this thing and I will betray him," than for him to go to Arian and say, "Hey, I could do this thing. He might trust me, and then I'll," you know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's pretty obvious the
Yeah.
prince can do you a favor in return, right? He's like, "Oh, this guy, what's he gonna do?" And he says he's gonna name him Lord, which of course that doesn't happen. Arian is, exiled of like immediately after all this. So Stefan, whatever reward Stefan was promised, I don't think he got it. Like, what did Arian
I
have
do
all that
think-
money with him or a lordship with him? Arian, first of all, Arian can't make someone a lord. He doesn't have that power. So there's something weird going on there with Stefan. Like, he believes more Arian's because like, well, I'm going to be more powerful one day or something like that. Which is, I don't know how that scene went, but Stefan was. By betraying Dunk, he was also a bit naive about what the kind of man that he was signing up for or with.
I do think that he left not to go get more knights, or at least in addition. Maybe he made some superficial effort or something, but it makes sense that he left there to go talk to Arian, or maybe some representative of Arian, because remember he said he knew Sir Lionel. I'll go get Sir Lionel. But when Dunk thanks Sir Lionel, thanks all the knights for coming, and thanks Stefan for coming to get them, Lionel's like, "Stefan? Who are you talking about?"
No, he goes,
They got
"Stefan?
me.
Stefan?"
Right.
He doesn't even get the right name.
Yeah, so it's clear that he at least didn't go get Lionel, which he said he was doing, which makes sense. He went. I think it's also possible that Arian made a promise that he knew he couldn't keep. Stefan maybe didn't know Arian couldn't give him that land, or he talked to some representative of Arian, or maybe even Makar or someone else,
I don't think Makar had any involvement in it, but
No,
I also
Makar
think
wouldn't have, yeah.
Stefan, I mean, it's possible Arian did talk himself up, and which points to the idea that Arian was gunning for a higher status, and then he might have said like, "Hey, I'm the future of House Targaryen. I will make sure you are rewarded one day."
Yeah.
He might have made it clear to him even that this would be not immediately after, but I will remember you. You will not be forgotten, type of thing.
I agree with y'all that this is the best chance. The most likely timing is right after he leaves to go say, "I'm going to go get more knights." What he actually does is go to talk to Arian, or like you say, possibly one of his representatives.
Can I point out one other little, I think, interesting detail? Is Stefan says, "You won't die under my watch. I promise you that." And that I don't know how much he kept that promise, but the promise held true. But I also wonder if on any level Stefan maybe intended on the other side to make sure it ended in some way that didn't include Dunk being killed. I wonder if he did still have some honorable intentions underlying his betrayal.
I doubt it. He
But then it
just
makes
doesn't
me
seem
wonder
to have
that
any good
is
quality. Like, Raymond is his cousin,
Yeah.
and Raymond just always says he's crappy, and I just believe Raymond.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he has.
I want to believe that there was some initial intention, at least. He seems so, I can't think of the word, sincere, I guess, when he's like, "I saw what they did to the puppeteers, and that's wrong, and it's, it's not, we are supposed to protect, and da-da-da-da." I don't know.
But then he goes on about
how.
how this is going to make people famous and how he's excited about
Yeah.
that, So I think that's really what he's just like, yeah, I'm using the cloak of true knighthood to vault myself onto
Further
a
myself.
higher status. Yeah.
But it speaks to Stefan himself being a good actor, not just
Yes.
Edward Ashley or whatever. That Stefan himself is a good actor because it was believable. I wanted to believe him right there. Like it was a good argument. It was what Dunk wanted to hear. It's what. It's the argument Dunk's making to Baelor about being a true knight. So it was very believable.
In the book, Raymond expresses doubt that Stefan knows those men, so they decided to cut that line to make it more surprising.
But I think he looks a little
keep...
suspicious here. Like, I think Raymond looks on edge, and like he's not entirely sold.
He's not sold. You're right, but he doesn't come out and say that, which was an interesting choice there.
I do think that was a moment when he said, "You could just run." I think I don't remember the correct quote, but I think that was where that line came. Is like, you could just get out of
it's
here.
after Stefan
Dunk's
leaves the tent.
like, "Won't they kill me?" And he's like, "Won't they kill you anyway?" Yeah.
So Daron in the book points out, by the way, we're about to talk about Daron, but he says Aerion can buy a seventh man if he need be. And yeah, that's also what happens. So they didn't bother with that line as well, presumably also to keep it a secret, to have the surprise. They boosted the sincerity. They also wanted to boost the surprise. It seems almost straightforward in that regard, and it seems to work. Shout out Corn Emperor, who sends a super chat of support. Appreciate that. Well, let's talk about Daron, the drunken dragon dreamer. Egg enters the Fossaway tent and tells Dunk, "Hey, I'm still your squire." It's a little slightly complicated because he's like, "Does Maekar know you left?" And Daron enters saying, "Gods be good, I hope not," which is like, well, then is he going to let you squire for him after all if he doesn't even know you left? Like, anyway, that Daron says that exact line, "Gods be good, I hope not," but a major line is added here that I think slid under the radar. He says, I don't want another foot whipping. A foot whipping. That is an extremely painful punishment, often used as torture. It used to be commonly done as a way to conceal torture, because you could, your feet aren't seen necessarily. It's like, look, this person hasn't been beaten up. But the world is wise to that now, and it's like a specifically mentioned thing on like what's legal torture, and what counts as torture, things like that. So it's like a thing in the all the aid organizations around the world are well aware of this. So the implication is that Maekar is doing that. Like they're not just saying Maekar is a tough father. They're saying, no, he beats him. And
which
that,
I could believe.
That I believe it, but I don't necessarily believe they just did that without talking to George about it. So I think maybe that came from George.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder what kind of punishments Aerion has gotten over the years, and like what kind of a example Maekar is setting for them, right?
It's possible that the punishments that Aerion has gotten have made him tougher. Like, well, I need to be a better fighter so my dad isn't upset with me, or I need to be more deceitful so my dad doesn't catch me. Whereas it's made Daron even more of a drunkard, even more care, even less. My father doesn't even love me. Nothing I can do to impress him. He's just going to beat me. It is. In no way do I want to justify it, but it is pretty egregious what Daron did here. Like, in addition to, like, imagine like the fear that Maekar would have had over his boys, and maybe this having happened several times before, he doesn't really worry about it. But he really is suddenly missing two of his sons. That's got to be troubling for like a week or more that they were gone, right? And then on top of that, the efforts of all the other people scrounging around trying to find him and what's happened, other people that might have been chastised or been whipped themselves for losing track of them. Not to mention the dishonor. He's supposed to be in this tournament, all these things. You can see it is pretty awful what Daron has done here.
Yeah, he's not as bad as Aerion, but it's bad.
To do it, but
I can see why Dunk is this mad, and look at Peter Claffey's face here. He's like, he really was like an enraged giant.
You're right. And this was a very important adaptation choice here, because it doesn't happen in the book, but I understand why they did it. In the book, Dunk notices that he does draw his dagger. He just doesn't put it to Daron's neck. He notices that Daron is completely unintimidated by it. You got to show that. And this is how you show it. Daron was not intimidated by having the dagger pushed up his neck, but he's afraid of his dream. So he was completely unafraid of this. He's like, he's still joking and like playing it off. He knows Dunk's not going to kill him, or if he does, he just doesn't care. But he's scared of the dream, and he's scared that it is him in the dream. So he's scared of his prophecy, but he must know that, well, I'm not going to die like this. He has certainty that Dunk isn't going to kill him there. So I think that's pretty interesting.
Or he's accepted that he's going to die like this. It could be like, oh, this is the moment. This is what I dreamed about. Go ahead and kill me.
Well, then why is he scared of the dream?
Anyway.
Why is he scared of the dream then? He's been scared of that dream, and he's not scared of this. So I think that's an important dichotomy. Yeah. Anyway, the dialogue is pretty similar to the book here as well. It's some changes, some omissions, but not too different. It's weird though. One thing that I thought was odd here, slightly disappointing, was this show really leaned into the comedic elements quite a bit, right? And they took out two of the funniest lines of Daron's. They took out, well, he wasn't at the bottom of my wine cup and I hadn't looked anywhere else. And they took out, my brothers have my measure when it comes to fighting and dancing and thinking and reading books, but none of them is half my equal at lying insensible in the mud. We can hope that maybe that comes later, but probably not. Anyway. But they did keep the too bad Aryan wasn't born a Fossaway. Then he'd be, oh, look at this. Ashea has a Fossaway Aryan ready for us.
It says Aryan Fossaway after drinking the wild cider. And it's a red apple with Finn Bennett's features and hair and pose. And I find it a very funny a tweet and meme. Good job to this person. Makes me really smile. And it is a favorite line of mine. But I want to say something more about this line here because it comes in a interesting way to me personally, in that he's being a real dick to Raymond right here, but that is explained based on something that isn't in the novel, I find, which is Egg tells him about the abuse that Aryan, did to him, and he's really opening up, and it's really intense. And probably Daron went through something similar with Aryan, you might think, or has at least experienced it, or Egg's talked. Daron is familiar with this, and Raymond laughs. He snickers. And it's not, I feel like part of that is it's awkward. Part of that is it's gossip about someone that Raymond really hates.
It validates all those things he was saying.
All these things he was saying, right? Like he's kind of a freak, that he's terrible and a pedophile and all of these awful things, right? And so he snickers, but Dunk does not like that. And he looks at Raymond and scolds him with his eyes over it. And Daron also does not like it. And that's what leads him to say that right here, he says that very snarky line to Raymond, kind of putting him in his place, insulting him. And I thought that was really a good addition, in fact, to explain why Daron was like this to him.
Yeah, so that's two examples there. You did that. You showed this example there, and I pointed out the example of why they had to go a little farther with the dagger, just to show that he wasn't afraid of it. Now, let's actually talk about the dream. When Daron pulls Dunk out, Daron pulls Dunk outside to talk. It's also very similar to the book scene. Let's have the quote first, actually, and then we'll go from there. This is the book version of the quote, which you'll recognize is very similar to what you heard on the TV show.
I dreamed of you and a dead dragon, you see. A great beast, huge, with wings so large they could cover this meadow. It had fallen on top of you, but you were alive, and the dragon was dead. This scene seems to have been shot similarly to House of the Dragon Season 1, Episode 3, I believe it was, when Viserys is drunkenly weeping in front of the bonfire, telling Alicent about his dreams in a way that frightens and confuses her, which is what's happening with Dunk here. The implications are different. A lot of things are different about it, but I think they were maybe trying to... I agree. I think that was really well shot, well filmed. I think it exactly reminds me of Viserys and Alicent there. And I thought the makeup and costuming here was also really spot on in terms of how haunted Daron looks and how teary-eyed he looked, how kind of red-nosed like a drunk he looked, all of these things. Really Daron, the red-nosed dragon, Targaryen. By the way, also, this dreams like this are why Egg was a lot more freaked out about the fortune teller. He's like, well, my brother's dreams come true. Why not? So I know it's possible.
Just a quick note, by the way, that fortune was more realistic to Egg than it was to Dunk. Dunk's like, yeah, sure, I'll be rich. But Egg's like, I am a royal. You're on to something here.
Super chat from Jillsville, who says Daron's sigil is a possum. All right, yeah, fair. And Corn Emperor says, I keep wanting to ask if Egg is a way for us to see how Fagon, young Griff, would be as a king, commoner life. Oh, absolutely. There are like a dozen strong parallels between Fagon and Egg that we've gone through in the past. Well, I'll have to arrange that because I can't remember them off the top of my head. So some other time we'll go through that. Or perhaps I'll remember.
Aegon is a fake commoner.
yeah, right.
Aegon is a fake royal.
I know one of them is that they both wear a straw hat. The first time we see young Griff, he's wearing a straw hat. That's pretty cool. So let's talk about Steely Pate's penny. Another scene pretty much straight from the book. really with a few additions that really couldn't have been done in a book. Dunk takes a walk in the rain, checks out the wreckage of the puppet show, and then we get Tanzel's voice. Hearing him, that's a great way to do it. Like, it's a different sort of inner monologue, but he's hearing someone else's voice, something that we already saw in a performance, and he's thinking about how it applies to him. He's looking at Florian, and has this "you're a fool" rings out in his head. So it's really well communicated, but it's very artistic.
It also kept up our streak of a flashback in every single episode, because I will say, I do not believe the Arlen shot was an actual flashback. I think it was for dramatic effect in Dunk's head. And I think we have clues to that based on Dunk's garb, which he didn't have back then. But we have a flashback because we do see Tansel. So let's hope. We know in episode 5 we'll get a flashback. Hope we get one in episode 6. And honestly, every episode of the whole show.
Yeah, flashback central. So, he finds that head of Florian. He's looking at it. This was in the trailers. We really wondered what this shot was for a long time. And, it's one of those other things, like what we talked about, Sean. It's like, it makes so much sense. Of course, it's Florian's head. The puppet show gets destroyed. It didn't even occur to me that this was a possibility. And like, once I saw it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's really obvious.
I think it's that we were thinking of small puppets, even though we had seen that they were large puppets. But I think in our heads, we still were in the small puppet state of mind that it didn't cross my mind.
But also, I thought maybe this was a dream sequence, or this was like a flashback. At the time, I was like, I considered that because I didn't know what else it was. This is some sort of Shakespeare reference too.
Yeah, it does seem to be. I seem to remember in one of the behind the scenes thing that the head of Florian is a mold of Dunk's head. Do you guys remember hearing that?
I do not think I saw that, and I don't know that I think that's true.
Arian's helmet is a mold of him.
Yeah, I think that's what you're thinking of, is that Arian's helmet is Finn Bennett's face, but I watched all of the extras, and I have not seen that.
Yeah, if anybody else heard that, weigh in. Maybe we'll see if
I think I've just seen Joe Magician, who says he thinks it looks like Dunk, and he had a video where he talked about how Florian looks like Dunk, but I don't think he's saying it was confirmed.
Right on. So just as Steely Pate shows up and he tells him, "Hey, I've got the shield," and before Dunk turns to leave, you hear he remembers Tanzel's scream, and then this is another one of those great segues, as you said, Sean. This is one of the more like overt ones where he closes the door and it makes a snapping sound, just like her finger snapping. So it's like they're remembering that pin. This is a great scene. It's also like I'm almost tired of hearing myself say it, but it's also a wonderful thing that they keep getting things so close to the book version, because this book scene is great. There's nothing to change, no notes, right? I mean, only the things that have to be adapted for dialogue wise or visual wise. Sir Arlen of Pennytree meet Steely Pate of Penny Rim or Penny Shield. That's how much he charged. Even the beard scratch. Even in the book, he's scratching his beard when he says that. And from you, a copper. Just great line. So you have to have a lot of context to understand what that line is. That's the only thing that holds it back from being an even better line. Because in a vacuum, it doesn't quite stand. But it's great. It's great. And the dialogue about the rim, the dialogue about the shield, and how he thinks it's painted up like death. And he's like, no, it's elms alive, green. All that's from the book. And then Dunk is crying just a little bit, wiping his eyes. He's wet because there's rain dripping down, so it's a little ambiguous, but
it's not ambiguous really. When you're watching, you do see really clearly here the tears spring up in his eyes, and then fall down his face, and then him wipe it away, and his nose running even.
He took note of that too. Like you're right, I guess, Ashaya. And he took note too when he asked what happened, and Steely Pate said they make for Dorne. Well gone is well forgot. Also a line from the book. And he said good. Dunk says good. And that, I think Pate even more was sure about Dunk at that moment. He was like, well, he's thinking first of her safety. Like, he wants to see her, but her safety is more important. And that's just another clue from Steely Pate. I think he already knew by then who he was dealing with, but this was just more of the same. That shield looks so good.
I think this episode was like 95% the same as the book. I think this episode, maybe more than any other episode so far, has been just straight from the book.
Mm-hmm,
and even thinking about, I don't know, some things we've touched on earlier, like a lot of the lines spoken. I was pointing out that Dunk's interaction with, I didn't say it, but you kind of pointed out his interaction with Darren, his interaction with Baylor, and his interaction with the Egg were all a little bit more aggressive in the show than they were in the book. though the lines were almost all still the same. It was just like his delivery. And it's an example of how you can with filmmaking, whether it's music or editing or performances, still add something to it, even if you're perfectly exactly reflecting whatever the lines or the imagery in a book, but the emotion or the performance or the music behind all that can change the tone a little. But even those little nuanced changes, I think, are fine. I think it's interesting that they make Dunk a little bit more. I don't know what phrase to use. They're maybe giving him more agency, or maybe putting ourselves in his shoes of like, yeah, I'd be mad too. It's a little easier for us to maybe relate to him feeling so wronged than to him being like, oh, well, I guess I'm just a big dummy. You know what I mean? And that's also harder to get across without his internal monologue. But
yeah, it's easier to act anger, and I think you're right on both points that it is more relatable, more likable. I think that's a good point on why they would do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm with you all on that. And, just as a not directly related concept, it's certainly a thing that adaptations do is you modernize it a little bit. You maybe make the language a little more familiar to people of current generation, whoever's watching now. For one very simple example of this is Egg, when he's cheering for the Joust, he's yelling, "Come on!" That is something people say right now in sports. That's a current sports cheer.
Yeah.
Like in 2026 and 2025, that's what people say. And he could have been saying, "Let's go," and it would have been about the same, and then, but like 20 years ago, he would have been, I don't know, saying something else.
Can I say just about an aside about the sports thing, and this comes back to a previous episode with Dunk and Egg together. I thought it was a really sweet, beautiful moment for them to bond over sports there, because if you're watching the behind the scenes inside the episodes and all that, they showed that Peter Claffey and Dexter Solancel in filming, they really did go to sports games to bond, and so you see them cheering like at football games and stuff like that together, which I just liked that when real life parallels fiction so well, and it's just something that is true of humans across fiction and reality, that we like to cheer sports teams on.
Can you imagine the real life example of that? Like, was his head shaved already? It would have been like Raymond's like, I've seen you with that boy before. Like, who is that tall guy with that shaved head? Hey, you're probably just think it's his son or his little brother or something like that. But like, can you imagine like seeing them and be like, that's weird? And then like 5 months later, you find out about this show and you're like, oh, that was Dunk and Egg. Oh my God. You just like wake up one morning and just realize the memory comes back to you. Yeah. David Fox 4548 says, "I'll help me with this. Arlen had not been an attorney since the Baelor Joust event, so maybe he was going to Ashford to knight Dunk and allow him to enter the tourney. It's an interesting theory. In general, I like trying to fill in the gap for why Arlen was going, because according to Dunk, it was sort of a sudden decision. It wasn't like what Arlen had planned before, and it was like sort of a spur of the moment decision. So there is a little something there, maybe.
As a knight, yes. I think it's a strong theory. I think Arlen intended on knighting Dunk. I think he did. I do think so. I think he was training him. I think he would have knighted him if it had happened, but it didn't happen. And I think it's a good theory, David Fox, that why else go to Ashford unless Arlen just wanted one last send-off? Maybe. I think also it's possible Arlen knew a certain knight was going to be there, a certain lord, rather.
Yeah, there's a chance for employment there.
Yeah, he wanted employment, and he knew someone would be there that might hire him, and he needed to be employed because he couldn't be a hedge knight as readily now. He was sick.
Mm-hmm.
I think the problem with that theory, two comments. One, I think the problem with that theory is that Arlen had already knighted Dunk. That's why we need to go to Ashford.
Ha, boo, hiss.
And the other is that it's something I think is interesting that I don't even think they need to give us anything else for it. But they did make a point a couple times of showing that gash on Arlen's forearm that I'm taken to be that's like it got infected and led to his death.
Yeah.
He just got a cold from
Dunk even thinks it was a cold, but yeah, that's a good point that it was more than that. He had that's more likely to kill you, like sepsis or something like that. Good point.
Maybe Dunk didn't even realize that if Arlen hid that from him well enough and did just think he got cold. But
yeah. So here's a question for everybody. It's not necessarily it's the one that we don't necessarily have an answer to, but at what point does Baelor start thinking about the possibility that he's going to join Dunk? Not that he's made the final decision. At what point does it occur to him? Like in the back of his mind, when does his subconscious push him towards that? Like it's working at him, right? Dunk, everything that Dunk said, everything that's happening, it's eating away at him. He's realizing what he's got to do. At what point does it become clear to him? Like, is it all the way back in the early part? Is it, I
think overnight. I think he
Okay.
overnight, as he sat with his thoughts, I don't think it happened to him right as Arian said it necessarily. Maybe it did, but I think overnight he probably prayed on it. Even if he's as religious as he's made it seem, I think he thought about it and he made the decision. And then it had to have been a bit in advance, because he did have to go get his son Valar's armor, get the breastplate stretcher for it so he could fit in it, and come out and get the horse ready. Like, he did have to plan ahead. It wasn't at the point that he knew Dunk was short. That's what I know for sure. It wasn't when he knew Dunk was absolutely short and when he knew Stefan had betrayed him, because enough time didn't pass for him to go get ready.
Yeah, I think getting all that armor and stuff would have taken probably multiple hours. Especially having to get it from his son and everything. So I don't think it could have been like right at the last minute. I think it's possible that he started considering it at the same moment that Maekar realized, wait, I'm going to have to fight in this thing. I think it might have occurred to Baelor at the same moment that it occurred to Maekar.
You might have.
But I think it's also possible, maybe more likely, that he caught wind of Stefan conniving and realized that, crap, I'm going to have to do this.
That's true. That's possible.
That's a
They're
good
both
theory.
in the same castle, Arian and Baelor, and Baelor probably knows, like, who's Arian visiting with. He has people. I think it's
One
very,
of the Kingsguard
very likely,
could have told
right?
him or something.
Yeah, the Kingsguard. I think
If
that's
Arian
a great.
or other people weren't worried about finding a seventh, even if he didn't necessarily specifically know it was about Stefan, he probably realized, wait, if they have 7,
Because Baelor would be wondering who their 7th is, too. He already knows who the 6 are, but he would be like, I wonder who their 7th is. He would be thinking about that. He's not going to miss a detail like that. So let's talk about the setup for the trial. Obviously, the trial doesn't begin in this episode. I presume it'll begin pretty early next episode, not right away. Baelor's got to give a speech. We might have flashbacks. There's going to be flashbacks. We just don't know where they're placed. Well, we know where some of them are placed, but we'll talk about that in the preview episode. I love this shot of Dunk facing the tournament grounds, which is no longer a tournament ground. It is now a trial by 7 grounds, with his sunset shield facing us as dawn breaks in front of him. That's a really great shot that I think you had on screen earlier. There it is. Cool. Yeah, I love that shot.
Yeah,
really
I did.
good.
They made sure to get the colors to match, his shield, I think, very well. I thought it was very beautiful, Aziz. I agree.
So when Dunk walks in, he's not feeling good at all. He's doubting himself. He's doubting he'll have support. Just a lot of things. And then there's people there. He is offered an egg in this trying time, and this egg comes with many benefits. When he walks onto the field, he finds help away. Let's have the book version of this, because again, you could swap the book and the show version and not necessarily be sure which is which. Quote.
Then he saw the others. The one-eyed man with the salt and pepper beard, the young knight in the striped yellow and black surcoat with the beehives on the shield. Robin Risling and Humphrey Beesbury, he thought in astonishment. And Sir Humphrey Harding as well. Harding was mounted on Arian's red charger, now barded in his red and white diamonds. He went to them.
Sirs, I am in your debt.
The debt is Arian's, Sir Humphrey Harding replied, and we mean to collect it.
Got that exact line. And this is when we get Sir Lionel saying, who the F is Sir Stavron? And so as we said, as we predicted, they were and appreciated, they gave a little more setup for Egg bringing Robin Risling and the Humphreys. Well, particularly Robin Risling and Lionel Baratheon, really. The Humphreys come on their own pretty much because they have their own motivation.
Yeah, we see the motivation, of course, with what happened to Humphrey's horse and leg, which he references. And can I say Humphrey Beesbury, you have something to say about him, but I don't know if y'all noticed his mustache. I just want to point this out. He dyes his mustache. He bleaches it, basically. He dyes it like honey colored, like a bee.
He's got a honey mustache. That is crazy.
Yeah, he does. It's really, really very funny to me.
It's honey mustard. I mean, honey mustache.
Yeah, very funny.
So Beesbury's there because he's the brother-in-law of Harding. So that's pretty straightforward as well.
The two Humphreys
that's straightforward.
Yeah.
That's straightforward to us, but did they mention that in the show at all?
Nope. I assume they're going to talk about him a little bit in the beginning of the show because there's a little setup more. But yeah, he is not. His name hasn't even been dropped even. So check out Egg over here. He's just like, even though this is really serious and everything is bad, look at Egg playing with the axe. He's just playing with the axe. That's great. He's like,
excuse me, that's
he's even
not
making
playing. Sounds. He is getting ready in case he's called to join.
He might need to
he might be the
7.
youngest ever knight, and he's got to be prepared. Aziz, come on, you don't dream to imagine.
I'm so wrong. You're so right. So yeah, basically, Dunk only found one helper on his own, and that helper was a complete fraud, Stefan. So. Yeah, it's an egg in this trying time, not an apple. But an apple does step forward, Raymond the Squire, and it's awesome. Squire no more. He's no longer Squire Raymond. And the apples are redeemed somewhat. Still a forbidden fruit, though.
Can I say I love two things? I love Stefan's armor. It is very cool and beautiful with all the apples, and he also has like a very stunning cloak with the apple embroidery on the back. But I also love Lionel paying attention to this interaction, and I wonder if he's like, "Oh, that's Sir Stevron. What an asshole!" You know?
Yeah.
But, like,
I'm glad I don't know him.
He is paying attention from when this happens. They make sure to show him, so it makes sense that he then walks over to get involved in the knighting. He has witnessed this whole thing and sees that this guy's a real dick.
I seem to remember that was in the book too, that the other knights were a witness to this betrayal.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think Lionel said anything, but he doesn't really say anything here either. He just looks.
Imagine
just put the camera on him to make sure it's important. Do we know that he's looking?
Imagine everyone in the stands watching this, up on the dais, up in the stands on the side, like what they see, because they see Stefan join, they see another Fossaway, like push him, and like they see an altercation has happened here. Like,
and then he rides to the other side.
Yeah, exactly. It was probably very dramatic for everyone to witness.
So as we discussed, the Raymond knighting was a great piece of cinema. No need to rehash that. It was just so cool, really well done. Just changed the moment and gave it a lot of gravitas, like I said.
Well, I would like to add one thing here.
Do it.
Which is, it also added more fuel to the fire of everyone who, one, is horny for Lionel, because he looks great. Two, people who kind of ship those two. I think there's like a look that Lionel gives Dunk here where he is like, he's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. And I think some people are theorizing that Lionel suspects that he is not an actual knight and that he is an imposter right here. That's why he kind of gives him the out. And maybe Lionel just suspects that he has low self-esteem about being a commoner. But I think Lionel is seeing Dunk's turmoil here, and that's why he gives him the out, right? Like he kind of does him a solid.
He gets something. He may not know exactly what's wrong, whether Dunk is like, I shouldn't knight him because I'm not a knight, or because Dunk doesn't actually know the words because he hasn't heard them because he wasn't knighted. Well, unless you're Sean.
I want to point out a couple quick things here. One, I seem to remember when we read the books, when we did the reread of the books, that we spent a while talking about like what the words are, that it's not consistent, that like we've had a couple moments of someone being knighted and it wasn't done the same way each time, which might even make sense. And
oh, sure. Like wedding vows are different.
Standardized format or book or so internet site to look it up, just different knights who were knighted by different knights before them, just do it the way they were. And that might be different in different territories and different time periods. And so that's maybe some justification for Dunk's hesitance, a good one, because there's got to be one since he hesitated. I don't know why else he would hesitate. But can I also say that in that moment, we even, to whatever extent Lionel might have been observing what was going on and kind of given Duncan out there, the trigger, specifically, there was a trigger both here and in the books, is Dunk was called away. In the book, someone said, hey, you need to go see someone. He's like, oh, and Lionel's like, oh, well, I'll do it. You go do that. And you hear the horns blew. And I want to bring that up specifically because when those horns go off, those deep horns, My cats get so scared. Does anyone else have cats that do this? Are all 3 of my cats, like, their heads perk up, their ears go back. One or 2 of them will run into another room. They are freaked out by those deep horns. Let me know if
we didn't have that happen here, huh?
Yeah, we did not have that. I'd be curious.
Interesting.
Curious to know. Can I mention something, Aziz, that's kind of a spoiler for something far in the future that may not be on screen ever, but I think it's okay to mention, which is Lionel talking about bloodying up the Kingsguard in their pretty white gowns. I think is some foreshadowing. You might guess, right?
It might be, but George wrote that line in 1998. Maybe he was thinking that far ahead. It's possible.
He might have been. I mean, it does think come of these to fruition again, right?
Yeah, Lionel does fight Dunk many years later in a trial by combat. Luckily, no one dies. So, Dunk is the center, of course. He's the main character. He's the POV. We care about him quite a bit, certainly more than Aerion. Aerion is the antagonist, but it's interesting how Aerion is the antagonist for, like, everyone, even the people on his side. Right? Like, Robin Risling and Lionel Baratheon aren't that focused on Aerion in particular, but the rest of them are. The rest of the 5 in Dunk's group there. Sir Humphrey obviously cares because of his personal. Beesbury, it's personal indirectly. And the Kingsguard, like, they don't want to do that. Like, that's not what they signed up for. Like, yeah, we want to protect the king, but from real enemies, not from him doing this himself, from this, as Maekar put it, this nonsense. And obviously Maekar doesn't want to be there. And Daron doesn't want to be there.
There was like a series of shots that I thought it was very telling, in which it shows, Aerion and Maekar arriving. It shows the small folk, and then it shows like a little kid watching him, and like just like the fear, like Aerion looking at the little child, and it was really sinister and ominous, and like, yeah, just kind of scary.
You know what? It almost reminds me of the moment in Dunk's head when he remembers as a child seeing Bloodraven.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this little kid is gonna remember the day that they saw Aerion and 2 saw a whole lot of other terrible things.
That's a good point. That's a very good. That's a good call. That's a good parallel, Sean. Yeah. So it's interesting too. One of the clues that Aerion maybe didn't even think this trial would happen. He thought Dunk would come up short. One, because of the Fossaway thing. He thought he, outmaneuvered him there. 2, because he has some of the people he has on his own side are not very good. Like he's got Daron, his own brother. Like he's already, by including his brother in this, he's including someone that's incompetent. So that's not a plus for him. It's only an argument to help him get the whole trial to take place. So either way, that's relevant here. So yeah, nobody wants to be there except for maybe some of the audience were like, oh yeah, these guys are going to kill each other. I want to see that. Like people who came to see a joust, they're like, oh, they're going to do it for serious. But like no one with a personal stake in this wants to be there except Aerion. So it's really kind of funny.
There's even a couple more to add to the list, by the way. Of course, Aerion is an antagonist to Tencel and her whole puppetry crew. And arguably to a lot of the people there, like you said, like they were threw a rock at his head when he, killed Humphrey's horse, and he disrupted the puppet show. But also both Lord Ashford and his daughter. This is kind of ruining their whole celebration of her birthday.
Yeah, what does she think?
This is extra exciting for her, but Aerion is going further to spoil it by bringing the Fossaway to the other side. So now they can't even do the freaking trial by combat. And I think that's part of why Ashford, when Dunk's like, "Can I get a minute?" and Ashford's like, "Yeah, definitely, because if you can recruit someone, that would be awesome, because this would be a big letdown for my daughter if we don't even have this." He's
also got to be afraid, because he's like, what if a royal dies at my castle? Like, really doesn't. He doesn't want this, I don't think.
I do love that they show us a shot of little Gwyn Ashford there, who's having the worst birthday party ever.
Yeah, she does not look happy. It's almost like what she said was true. It almost came true. War did not start over this, but it did. The sons being missing did cause a big drama, which is kind of what she was gossiping about, kind of getting ahead of herself, but she was right.
What you wish for.
Yeah, she was right. Yeah. So what people would have to weigh here is kind of interesting. Like if you're a knight in Stefan's place, or thinking along Stefan's lines, you're like, oh yeah, there's a great chance for glory here. Great chance to be sung about, to be written of. On the other hand, you're going against the Targaryens. Stefan had a good line for that. He's like, dragon house, where are their dragons? So he had like an argument ready for that to kind of downplay the danger of facing. They're still the royal house. Like, yeah, they don't have dragons. They still have like more power than anybody else. So, yeah, which acknowledges how powerful they were in the first place. The whole point, the royal house bribed Stefan. That itself proves it, you know?
They've got better armor than anyone else.
Yeah, they got cool armor. They got very cool armor.
Although Stefan is trying to live up to that, isn't he?
He is. His armor looked good, too. You're right. It almost makes him look like the centerpiece. He's the one guy in gold. You got 3 guys in black, 3 guys in gold, and 1 guy in gold. Or white and 1 guy in gold. Like, yeah, I'm the man. The apple is the center. So, yeah, like, who can bribe better than royals? Like, no one can bribe better than a royal, right? They have the most to give away, the most to offer. Even their promises are worth a lot, like, which is what Stefan got, which turned out to be an empty promise, most likely. So it's not just that if you fight for Dunk, you're making an enemy of the royals. It's that if you fight for the royals, you get an opportunity. But, of course, there's only this one slot. Only one person can fight with them. So Stefan really seized his opportunity there. So one scene that didn't happen, but I'm pretty sure it will happen. The commons just going mad for Dunk, just showing him their love and him being surprised, and then Sealy Pate explaining it. So he says, "A knight who do they think I am? A knight who remembered his vows," the Smith said.
I think it's one of people's favorite lines in the series, and I do think that people are pretty upset and confused that it's not there. But I think we forget the trial has not officially started yet. And they need to fluff for time in the next episode. And I think it could happen probably just before the fight starts. But I could even see a way they could write it in to happen to bolster Dunk during it. You know what I mean? But I think more likely it happens just before it kicks off.
Yeah, I think it'll still happen for sure. Because remember, we got to get the whole bit where Baelor gives them a strategy about the lances. You know, they're gonna have to go get equipped and have a huddle up, and I bet they'll encounter the crowd at that moment.
Yeah, there's a shot of the trailers of them throwing up. Dunk and Raymond are like, bah! You're like, oh my god, we're about to do this.
Also, there will probably be, like Ishay pointed out, I bet we get some solid extended flashbacks, because there's not that, like, at this point in the book, there's only like 12 more pages. You know what I mean? Like, there is not much left in the book.
It's the second longest episode, too. Episode 5 will be. So you're totally right. And there are trailer shots that we've seen of flashback scenes that have not happened yet. So, yeah, it seems like boom. Yeah.
Can I say, you made me think of one other thing. Earlier we were wondering about at what point Stefan switched sides or went to Arryn or whatever it was. I bet it was after, what's his name? Darren and Egg came in to tell him what was up, or had he already left at that point?
He had already left, yeah.
He would catch wind. He would still catch wind. He would realize, or maybe even just figure on his own, that it'll be Arryn, his dad Maekar, his brother Darren, 3 Kingsguard. That leaves 1 spot. I bet he just figured out there's 1 spot I could be in.
Yeah, that's a good theory. Yeah, I think you're not wrong. Are there no true knights among you? Yet another iconic line that we were waiting on, and well, this one we got in the trailer. So you know, it wasn't exactly one we waited on. It was really great. I mean, you waited on it in a sense, in that this novel was written so long ago. But.
Can I say I should have grabbed the link for it? But as part of the promo for the season on the red carpet, they had a bunch of the different cast. I shouldn't say all, but many of the different cast members do their own rendition of "Are there no true knights among you?" And some of them do it in a very comedic way. They give it all kinds of different, different twangs and intonations. It's really good. I should have grabbed it and find it, but I'll put it to the History of Westeros Instagram story. How's that for y'all if you follow us on Instagram at the History of Westeros? But it's really, really funny, including like they have Raymond do it, they have Arryn do it, Baelor, Peter Claffey, Dunk, he does another version of it that's actually like very like casual and really he does a very funny rendition of it. So yeah, keep an eye on that. But yeah, they've been promoting that quote, that line since before the season premiered.
Are there no true knights among you?
Oh, I love it, Aziz. Yeah, we should all have to go around and do that.
Yeah, it's extra sad for Dunk because, yeah, Sean, you think about how you're going to say it. Because deep down he knows that, hey, I'm not actually. I wasn't actually even knighted, and nobody else here is acting like a knight. It's one of the great parallels to Brienne, because Brienne also isn't a knight. Well, until she is. But for all that time, she's not. But she acts more knightly than any other knight we've ever seen. And until perhaps this guy, who is a match, not necessarily ahead of her, but equal. And think back what Aerion said. One of the first lines Aerion says to Dunk is, "Knighthood has fallen on sad times." Yeah. You, Aerion, you're the sad times. Dunk is, and this is exposed in this moment. It's not the kind of thing Aerion was talking about. It's not the problem Aerion was referring to, but Dunk asked for true knights to back him, and no one did. So knighthood has fallen on sad times, and I think Baelor saw that. He heard the laughing, too, probably, which reminds me of plenty of times when Brienne was mocked, but also when Barristan was fired. When Sansa thinks about how sad that must have been to have people that he looked at, were his co-workers, fellow Kingsguard and his fellow brothers and all that. And then when Otho stands up and farts, it's like, well, they've been doing the toilet humor all along. It was an efficient way to make Dunk the butt of the worst joke possible. Like, they're laughing at him over this. It's just a silly thing to laugh at, but they're laughing so hard because the idea of it, they're mocking Dunk. They're mocking this notion. They're mocking the idea that what Dunk did was right. It's a really bad thing to have happen. It's really just, oof. It's all the things that the show and the novel are building up to are exposed here. It's like, yeah, really. Knighthood has fallen on sad times. Yeah, so Shay, you put Red up there on screen. That's a really important catch. So she's the one person not laughing. Oh, look, that's Manfred right there in the corner, in the left there. So she doesn't laugh.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. She's there probably, I guess, with him as part of his entourage, right?
That's right.
That's why because she's not a noble. She's a sex worker who's up there. She's dressed quite nicely, but she still, would not normally be up there. And
she knows who Dunk is. She's had those conversations with him. She knows what's going on to a certain extent, and she got a measure of his personality too. And so when Baelor comes in, she smiles. So it cuts back to her, and I thought that was nice.
Yeah, can I say something first, Sean, while I'm in these pictures? Which is, we see a whole lot of different pairings of houses, and it's kind of fun to speculate on who they might be.
I think that's Blackwood,
I think these are Lannisters.
Oh,
that's my guess.
That's the Grey Lion and Tybalt.
Exactly,
you're totally right. You're 100% right.
It looks like two lions. That's what I think. I think it looks just like how you picture a Lannister.
You're totally right.
I don't know, but these two guys have like fish scales. They're not Tullys, but there's some kind of house that I guess would be associated with fish. If you have any good ideas, I'm curious about this house. I would have thought they were related to the Tyrells. I don't know. And then we see these two. Also love to hear your theories about them. Of course, I think the Brackens are spot on. They really look like the other Brackens we've seen in House of the Dragon with these kind of broad faces, So I really liked that. And then we see Medgar Tully right here. We see the Tullys because there he is with his fish scales and his red hair and all of that. And they're kind of in a Riverlander section, you might think, because he's next to the Brackens as well. So they might be slightly grouped like that. And so maybe those neat. Other two are other Riverlander houses.
Okay. Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah.
We love looking in at the background and seeing what houses are around. I'm hopeful that when we get the making of, which they have been doing they did episode 2 and 3 together. They might do, 4 and 5 together. I'm hoping that we get a lot more shots without the color grading of all of these background characters.
I wanted to say another thought here about how he's appealing, this group he's appealing to are the privileged people, right? The common folk, the normal, regular, poor, whatever people, they're on the other side. But he's appealing to the privileged people. And in the same way that Aerion looks at Dunk and says, knighthood's fallen on hard times, he's judging knighthood by your appearance. You don't look rich and fancy. You don't have nice armor. You're a knight, just some dude. How can you be a good knight? It's really fallen on hard times. But that's not the measure of a good knight, how you look and how fancy your armor is. It's how high your integrity is and your honor and your vow and all this other stuff. And it's interesting that these people who are all privileged, they aren't as worried about being true knights as they are worried about staying in the good graces of the king. He's kind of challenging the royal family here, and they don't dare disrupt their privileged positions to do the right thing. And you even wonder if some of them in there, as they kind of pan through in a different facial expressions, some of them maybe feel a little guilty or wonder if they should do something. But Otho makes it easy. He just farts and makes a joke of it, and like, oh, haha, okay, cool. I'm still in the right crowd. We get to make fun of the poor people. Okay, yes, I'm still in a privileged position. I'll just stay here and laugh and not worry about doing the right thing. And it's a kind of a sad commentary on knighthood, but it's also kind of a sad commentary on society, even in modern times. It's the way things go, you know.
And it's a sad commentary on Brackens. As usual. Yeah, so well said, Sean. One other thing about here to consider, you know, Aerion, there's a lot of evidence, at least some evidence that, like several other Targaryens, he got madder as he got older. And he's not that old here. You know, we mentioned that earlier. He's obviously, Finn Bennett is a lot older than the character, just like Peter Claffey is, and we've all seen that a million times with actors playing in their 20s playing teenagers. But it
does change the tone a lot when they do that, because you know, it's Dunk's in his early 20s here, whereas he's like 17 in the book. You know, he is only a handful of years older than Egg, and so it definitely changes a lot. I have mixed feelings about that, of all the changes actually, and that I feel like it does undercut some of it. But I think Peter Claffey has a certain vulnerability to him that still makes him seem kind of like a colt, you know, like awkward, you know what I mean? Whereas, and I think Aerion has a certain teenage brat quality to him, even though he is not a teenager here. He's still, you know,
plenty of 20-somethings still have that teenage brat
quality, he does. But that's my point. Is like I feel like at least they have the essence of like they're not full adults, you know.
There's something to that, yeah. And these guys are so privileged that they might not grow up as fast, even when Maekar is their father and pushing them towards it. So one last point about Egg, as we move on to the final scene, he, in a sense, if we look back on him running away from Aerion and from his family, it's kind of like how he's doing the Andal thing too. He runs away from his Valyrian heritage and in favor of knighthood. It's like the Andals migrated over to Westeros and created knighthood. Well, Egg ran away from his Targaryen family and got a knight and became a squire. You know, it's like a kind of a little microcosm of that. So I like that. It's not just because, and he points that out, when he shaved his head, it wasn't just for disguise. It was also to reject his brother and what he stands for.
I was gonna say I also really liked the shot of Egg's reaction to Baelor joining. You know, where he's like seeing like a real heroic act. You know, he's seeing a member of his family that he can respect and idolize and all of that. And I thought it was good acting on Dexter's part, because he really does look moved and awed in this moment, right?
Well said. All right, let's talk about the entrance of Prince Baelor. Baelor the Seventh, we can call him. We talked a bit about this before. You know, we talked about the expression on his face and how that was really well played and how it communicates quite a few things. I would also add to that, Baelor may have been disappointed as well. He may have been hearing. He could probably hear Duncan yelling and "Are there no true knights among you?" He probably knew what that meant because he knows Dunk was looking for somebody. And it may have just made him just like more both sad, but also more confident that he's doing the right things. He's like, yeah, this is knighthood. Really, he would also realize that knighthood has fallen on sad times, and everybody looks at him as the perfect knight. So he has to set the example. There's no better man to set that example, and he sees that. He's like, I can't pass on this opportunity to set an example. It's also like his own virtue is pushing him. Remember back when Sir Arlen, he mentioned Sir Arlen. Sir Arlen told me you were the soul of chivalry. Ugh. You know, Maekar has that reaction. Maekar's reaction here is really interesting. He doesn't yell or get mad. He's like, it's almost like he's unhappy for sure, but it's almost like he isn't entirely surprised. He knows his brother, you know, like he didn't see it coming, but he's also not entirely surprised. What do y'all think about that? What do you think about specifically about Maekar here in this moment?
Yeah, I think that he's, I would say he's surprised, but the fact, and he puts up a little bit of an argument. He's like, are you mad? But that's it. He doesn't put up an argument past that. I think he kind of knows he's doing the same thing. Maekar doesn't really want to do this, but he kind of has to. And he realized, Baylor doesn't really want to do this, but he kind of has to.
Well said. Very succinct, too.
Can I say something here, which is that someone in the chat, Gillsville, asked, why doesn't his armor fit right about Baelor? That is his son, Valar's armor, and so it does look awkward on him. I do think it does look like it's a little ill-fitting.
Yeah, it's a good detail. He's not supposed to be
I like that you were able to tell that, not knowing what was supposed to be happening. You were like, it looks awkward. So yeah, they did a good job with that.
Great catch. So, again, maybe I've said this enough, but I think that if Baelor lets this moment pass, he's basically saying that Aerian's version of Targaryen supremacy, rule by fear, do whatever you want, knightly vows are for the lesser folk. He just can't have that. He can't have that being communicated. He wants to lead by example, and it's that whole fear-love dichotomy that people like Tywin and Ned and others have talked about in the first novel and show. This is that. He realizes it's coming down to that. He needs his version. The example he sets is the one that he wants promoted, the one that everyone hears about afterwards, no matter what happens. Obviously, like you said just before, Sean, and Dunk isn't thinking about any of that. Dunk is still just like, what is happening? I came here to maybe be in my first tournament, and he doesn't have a political mind. He hasn't trained these ways. He hasn't practiced thinking along these lines. Even later, it's Egg who often fills in these details for him and acts as sort of his stand-in brain for matters like that. Anyway, but it is a major concern. It's a huge deal, and Baelor's character is the one who really brings that out, and that's why we care about him so much. While Duncan is representing quite a bit, Baelor is a version of him that has way more power to change things. So you like Dunk, we appreciate him, we want him to, we root for him. But until he becomes more famous later, he doesn't have this kind of power. He can only affect the people around him, which is a lot, but it's nothing like the heir to the throne, right? So Daeron's prophecy has a dragon falling on Dunk, and knighthood will fall on even harder times when Baelor falls on Dunk, the best knight in the realm, going out. Gillsville asks, is Steely's Pate serving as a squire there? It looks like it, yeah. And he does in the show. He does in the book, too.
Yeah. In the book, is he to Raymond? Or who does he serve?
No, he helps Dunk. He doesn't. There's no mention of someone helping Raymond, so maybe he did also. It's just not mentioned.
That's my theory here, is that's where Raymond has no one to help him. That's why Steely Pate would stick around, is that he's needed for that as well, right?
That's a good point.
And it's a good way to keep him on the field. But yeah, it is true in the book. But it made me realize that Raymond would not have anyone to help him.
Yeah, it's like we said at the beginning, but when we were looking at the first trailers, like you can't tell that Egg is behind him. You're like, that's not Egg behind him. There's no way Egg could lift that giant halberd and put it over his shoulders. I'm like, you're right. So it's quite possibly Steely Pate.
Dunk just got that armor, and so might need some tips and clues about how it fits and fastens. And Egg might also. He could help Egg out with that.
Oh boy, can Aziz and I relate, Sean? Because we both have had different types of armor. Me as Oscar Tully, Aziz as Geralt. He had kind of this, leather and clothing, but it's so very complicated. Let me tell you. And
so hot.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think that's a great point, that Dunk would need to be helped and instructed in how everything goes together.
He doesn't know where the straps go. Yeah, just like basic things like that. Like, where does his belt go?
Dunk has to sit on the ground because he's so tall. How can Egg strap it on?
Yeah.
Even if Egg was strong enough to do it all, he wouldn't necessarily be knowledgeable enough. And so Pate is probably around to help with that, but also would help Raymond or anyone else who needed it.
Yeah, I don't know what's more unrealistic, and this isn't a Game of Thrones thing. It happens in a bajillion different shows, and it has happened in Game of Thrones, but also in a lot of other fantasy properties, where you just have this, a knight kind of wandering around by themselves. Like, well, how do you do anything with your armor? Like, do you just keep it on all the time? It reminds me, I don't know if that's more it's recently I've come to learn about another thing that's unrealistic about a lot of fantasy shows, and this is a comedic thing mostly. It's like, now that I have this long hair, right, I can tell you that one night in a hedge, if you have long hair, you're going to spend 3 hours brushing your hair. Yeah. So you can understand why someone like Dunk keeps his hair short, and you wonder why like someone like Arian on the road, or like using the character I was playing when I dressed up as like the Witcher, like that guy sleeps outside. Like he needs magic to make his hair look that. That's the only way I can explain it. Same way they can put their armor on by themselves. Neither of those things are.
I think about that, and I've made that many times that point about beards. Like how
and you have long hair,
trim and clean and even when they're like, there's no electric razors. They probably don't have mirrors. They're just out in the wilderness. How do they keep? And I give a little bit of a pass because just for filmmaking, they got to make them look. They got to maintain continuity from scene to scene, so they just trim it and make it look the same every time. But in reality, people would look so much more disheveled and unkempt.
Can I tell
even the wealthy, the nobles would still, their hair and their beards are all too nice.
Okay, my little tiny little thing that bothers me in media of all sorts, and I get why it happens, and I'll say the show Norseman does a great spoof on this, a great riff on it, which is that you can't hear people that well. People's voices aren't projecting really that well. And Dunk's speech back down there, how many people were like, what? How, you know what I mean? Like, one, how well they could hear that. Two, who could hear that the Brood of Bracken even farted? No one.
Hugely loud fart.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So only the people around him, this guy stood up and did nothing is what most people would have thought. You know what I mean? And I have to just put that out of my mind because media always just ignores that they don't have like a megaphone to do this. And I do recommend on Netflix the show Norseman. They have a great joke about like, we're like, what was that? It's very funny.
And about how do you tell who's on your side when you're not wearing
there's no arm,
any sort of
there's no uniform.
How do we know who do you know? Look.
Yeah.
You can't recognize all the other 1,000 guys on our side. You know, we're not wearing uniforms.
We also got a good question here that I just want to bring up, which was Lady Ruscaline asks, where is Valar in this scene? And I think they very pointedly, even when they show everyone on the dais, they never show Valar and they don't show an empty space. He probably wasn't up there right then. They want to probably leave people to wonder if people are guessing who it could be. They might guess Baelor. They might guess Valar. And he probably was out helping his dad get into his armor.
He's probably the squire. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where he is. We probably see a shot of him now after this, but I think they were pointedly not showing us the empty spots for Baelor or Valar, even though they weren't there.
Unlike when they wanted to make sure we knew Maekar wasn't there, which is different. Yeah.
Two quick things I wanted to say, if I can, before we get too far past it about Dunk's voice projecting. That is something in the army you've probably seen in some kind of movies or training about how they like sing cadence as they march or run. Leaders have to be able to project their voice loudly, far, even when they're exhausted, because you got to shout out commands. The battlefield is loud. You got to talk to someone 100 yards away or whatever. You need to be able to project your voice. And it's a skill that you have to develop. And it also reminds me of the scene in The Life of Brian when Jesus is on the hill giving a speech and the camera pans out and you see the people around the hill, but it pans out and there's more and more people, and eventually it gets to Brian and these characters like, what did they say? What did the meek shall do? What? Inherit theirs? Oh, good for the meek.
He said, blessed are the cheesemakers.
Yeah, good for the cheesemakers. But they're straining to hear because it's so far away and Jesus isn't belting out with a projecting voice, so they got some humor out of that concept too.
Yeah, I agree. And your point about voices is actually in, I think, book 3. Jon Snow thinks about how he grew up practicing with Robb, yelling from one. They would each go up to a different tower and try to yell at each other so they could hear each other. And Ned Stark at one point thinks about how Robert Baratheon had a great battlefield voice. His roaring, his ability to roar was extremely effective. So this is actually our last little bit. I think that one of the things I mentioned at the beginning that's really interesting is part of our experience, people who've read the book already, is seeing other people's reactions to it. And I really want to know, let us know. Tell us, what does your family think? Who are they worried about? I don't think anyone thinks Dunk is going to die, but pretty much any of the other 13 characters could die. I don't know if anyone really cares that much about Sir Donald the Crabber's son dying. I think some people would want Arian and Daron maybe to die. Stefan almost certainly too. But I bet a lot of people are worried about Raymond, maybe about Lionel. And I wonder how much are people.
I think people would worry about Daron a little bit. I think you underestimate that a lot of fans do like a dreamer in the Targaryen family. They are partial to that quality.
Casual fans?
Yeah, I think kind of casual fans even. Or a lot of House of the Dragon fans, I would say, who've come over have become very partial to dreamers between that becoming that's so present in Helena. Yeah. And I've seen a lot of like art of Helena and Daron. I don't know. I would say some people care about Daron.
And also, but sticking on that subject with Daron, I mean, he gave that prophecy that a dragon was dead, you know? And so like, what do casual non-book readers think about that? That kind of says a dragon's going to die. So yeah, who are they most worried about? Are they worried about Maekar? Are they worried about Baelor? Like, are people worried about Baelor? Like, they're so excited that he came out. The one effect of that, besides the surprise, the great moment. Oh, and we didn't even mention the excellent use of the theme song, the original theme song. They redeemed it. Like, they were like, we shat on it.
Yeah, it's a hero's theme. Yeah.
That's the best use of that theme song ever. It was really, really good. Like, well done.
I'll say our example of watching it with Unsullied is the same people last week we watched it with who went like, wait, he's a Targaryen? Who were very surprised. She went, the prince? It's the prince? And she was very enthused that it was him, and she was like, I couldn't have guessed it would have been him. It was surprising to her and excited her a lot. So I'm kind of dreading watching.
The next one will be, all that excitement's going to get snuffed out. Oh boy.
Yeah, I want to make another quick point along this line, by the way, is that this is ostensibly a fight to the death. Like, I think a lot of people watching aren't worried about any of these characters dying because they don't realize that's what this is. And some of the details of this fight, the rules or how it's going to go down, get talked about in a book that I expect to get brought up in the next episode. But ostensibly, they're fighting to the death. Freaking, the mountain smashed the Viper's face in, right? That was a trial by combat. They're not just like jousting for fun or for even ego. They're jousting for life.
Yep.
I think Raymond brings it up, obviously.
Raymond does bring it up,
I think even, does Stefan reference it as well?
Yes, he says this is nightly combat, so your skin won't be at risk.
Yeah.
But that's all in one scene where Raymond says.
Still felt like banter between
Stefan.
them, like Stefan trying to put Raymond down. Maybe Raymond doing a little bit to warn Dunk, but how much does Raymond really know? Mm-hmm. But I don't know if it's really driven home. I feel the same thing too. Like, the fear of Dunk losing his foot was more real in the book because he could think about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's hard to show that. Yeah. So, and that's kind of an irony too. Like, thinking about who's going to die. None of the 7 on Aerian's side die, and only 3 people die total. Bad day to be named Humphrey.
I don't know. It really. I'm like, a lot of people died. It gives me so many questions about the faith of the 7 and what they think
come on,
this.
Faith of the 7.
I don't know.
Like
it doesn't seem so righteous.
There's always this other piece of it that isn't good or isn't what you think or isn't what you want. Sure, he can win, but there's a cost to be paid.
You're muted, Aziz. You are muted.
They're like, how dare you evoke this?
Yeah.
We're going to ruin it for you. That's what's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah,
the 7 are very petty. Yeah,
I mean, really, Aerian doesn't get any consequences from this, right?
Other than getting exiled to lease the place where Dragon Lords.
My point is that he doesn't get any consequences from the trial and from the faith of the 7 if they were thought to exist, which to me, this is a great clue to me that they do not exist, in my opinion, because nothing happens to Aerian, who is the one wrongfully invoking it, and he's a Valyrian, not even an Andal. Like, there's many reasons. I mean, I guess he has Andal blood, but regardless, he is. If anyone's spitting on the face of the faith of the 7, it's Aerian right here, and he doesn't get immediate consequences.
Nope. And in fact, had the trial not happened, like, there wouldn't have been a punishment for him. That's another thing that kind of gets lost in the shuffle. Is had there been no trial, or if Dunk just been executed or something like that, or been punished by losing his foot and hand, under none of those circumstances has anything happened to Aerian, except for maybe Maekar, privately punishing him, which might be pretty severe.
I mean, he does get publicly embarrassed, severely publicly embarrassed, and probably physically hurt too. Dunk beats the crap out of him, right? Also, can I point out one of my favorite lines of the whole book of all of Martin's writings was when I know maybe I shouldn't talk about this too much because it'll be next episode, but when Baelor is, kind of explaining his strategy, and there's a couple elements of it that Dunk questions, is like, is that honorable, sir? And Baelor says, the gods will let us know. Well, maybe that was the way the gods letting him know.
They sure did. No, actually, Sean, it wasn't Dunk who says that. I think it's Lionel who says that. Yeah. And that's when Beesbury's only line comes, when he goes, we will use, they're going to use 8-foot war lances. Beesbury says, we'll do the same. And he's like, nope, we won't.
No, I truly hope all that is in there. But.
Me too, yeah. So we'll see. So yeah, join us on Friday, me and Ashaya, for a quick 20 to 30 minute preview of that episode. We're going to pour over the trailer.
And there's usually always the stills from the episode are released by that point.
Yeah.
So we have a whole fresh crop of stills to go over on Fridays, which is always great fun for us.
That's right. Images and fun stuff like that. So unless we have any final questions or comments, we can move on to the outro here. How did the poll go, Shea? What do people say about the, what do they think? Would Daron have allowed this to even happen? Would he have put his foot down, his good foot? Would he have done that? I'm very curious about that.
I will tell you, people, 68% say no. 32% say yes. And in the beginning of the chat, the comment someone said was, well, he was the good. And so but what does that entail for you? Is that he would be obliged to say yes and follow honor, or that he would say no because he knows better? I don't know.
Baelor might try to talk him into it for all the reasons we described, the very many reasons that Baelor decided to join. He might try to convince his father of that. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough.
Don't know the character well enough, so I'm hesitant to speculate too much, but I'm wondering if he might have just said, no, we're not doing any of this. Aaron, you shouldn't have done that. Go to your room. Don't get back in the tournament. He might have just put a stop to the whole process.
Yeah, I'd like to think that he could have stopped it, but I don't know if once someone has invoked the idea of a trial by combat or trial of 7, whether they can, but I think he could have stopped it before it even got to a trial by combat being invoked. At the point that Arian was like, well, he said this is treasonous, Darren would have been like, no, stop. You know what I mean? So I think if he'd stopped
may not
it
have acted
before
out
that
as much
point,
too.
But I think if he had, let's say, arrived, I think if he had arrived after Arian had called for the trial of 7, I don't think he could stop it at that point.
Yeah, I
but
agree.
he's the king, and laws can change, and if he decides this is the time to change something, I think he still could. Right? That is his prerogative.
This conversation reminds me of a whole nother factor I forgot to bring up before. One extremely important dynamic that is hardly discussed at all, anyone in the show or us analyzing. I've never heard anyone talk about the idea that, if you wanted to lawyer this out, that they have to do this at dawn the next day. What if Baelor was like, all right, trial by 7, we'll do it 5 years from now. Everyone meet back up and we'll have this stupid trial. You know what I mean? That there are ways they could have belayed this process to give Dunk time to get a crew together, or to make Arian.
They have a right to a speedy trial by 7.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what they have, a speedy trial. You can't keep someone in. They could have kept him in prison for 5 years instead of giving him the trial by combat if they have that out. You know what I mean? I think there probably
maybe not
is
extreme like 5 years. Yeah, but they could have given him a week or two.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I would guess that they have some stipulation that it has to be within a certain amount of time. And you're right, it might be able to happen within a week.
Well, what would be the point of waiting a week, though?
That he gets more people.
Give Dunk time to get a crew together.
Oh, to get a crew together. Okay, sure.
That is the idea. Is that
but then it undermines the whole thing that if it's a good cause, people will fight for it. But how do you decide what's enough time?
What is enough time? It seems
what if there hadn't been a lot of people around?
It seems like overnight.
What if this wasn't a tournament? Right. What if this is just a random thing? What if even Arian couldn't have got the people? Well, maybe Arian could have
he wouldn't have asked for
a
trial
raven
7
to the castle and King's Night right out there. But even that would have taken a few days at least.
Or also when is the trial of 7 decided in the evening and it has to be in the morning? Or if it's decided in the morning and you have a full 24 hours, there's some leeway in that. It's not like it has to be within 12 hours. You know what I mean? It's just the next day that they're able. And I think this is what I will say, Sean, is that they're all gathered here for an event, right? This isn't meant to just go on for a week necessarily. How long is the tourney gonna be? So they have some impetus here that they wouldn't have if they were just in King's Landing, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, everyone's gathered here and has traveled and is staying with Lord Ashford.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of an impetus that
Ashford
Lord
doesn't
Ashford,
want it to be extended.
yeah, that's exactly my point. He doesn't want it to be
Yeah.
extended, or he'll be even more poor and in debt and all of that.
Cheat in even more tournaments.
He needs to get betting happening so he can make his money.
Cool. All right,
It
y'all.
does make sense from like a storytelling, entertainment purpose to have it happen sooner than later. But still, I think Dunk was given less than 12 hours. Like, it was nighttime when Arya broke her finger, and it dawned the next day that, you know what I mean? Like, it's, I feel like it's unreasonable to expect him to get a team together that quickly.
I think it was a whole day in between, but either way, that's too fast.
Yeah, maybe he sat in jail.
Well, maybe
for a
it's
whole
not
day
too fast
screaming at
because
Baylor,
there's
or-
a majillion nights around, and that this is the one time where I don't know. Either way, it's a moot point.
I
We
still
don't need to
wanted a
belabor
lawyer.
it.
That's all I'm saying.
Let's say goodbye, everybody. Hopefully you join us on Friday for the preview episode. If not, we will see you next Monday for sadness. I don't know what we'll call it. The episode is called "In the Name of the Mother," and we will be at our usual time of 6 to discuss it, all three of us. So we hope you all have a great week. Great. Come back to us with stories from your family and friends. We want to hear how everybody reacted to this week and next week. A full story of both the beginning of their love for Baelor and then their sadness. We can get whole sagas from y'all entirely.
Can I say one thing just really briefly that we didn't talk about? I had it on screen. People talked about it in the chat. I would feel silly if I didn't mention it. They gave Baelor heterochromia to match his son Valar, and you do see it more clearly on screen in this episode. I'm sure all of you have noticed, but I would feel silly if I didn't even mention that they did that. How cool is that?
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. I think it's like the Valar having the silver streak that we didn't even realize he had it, but he does have it.
Yeah, I didn't notice it but first, and then once it got pointed out, I can't not notice it. So, like, how did I?
Yeah, it does fall in that category. All right, everybody. Thanks to Bran for our great video intro. Thanks to everybody who came to hang out with us live today.
I also have a note. If you eagle-eyed viewers will note that our video intro outro is slightly changed. Bran has iterated on it, and I think we'll have one more slight variant at the end of the season. He added all of the shields of the people on Dunk's side in the Seven. So
Nice.
Make sure you pay close attention to the outro as we play it.
If you haven't reread The Hedge Knight, well, this might be a good time to do it. You could probably just do it in a few hours, and you're getting close to the end of the season. This would be a good time to like recap in your own mind. And if not, well, listen to our Valar rereadus of The Hedge Knight, which is publishing every Thursday night. We did that many years ago, and it's being put back to the top of our feed because it's rather relevant right now, I'd say. Until next time, everybody, on behalf of Ashea and Sean, Valar rereadus.